The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa N Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive. But we break on command 'cause women rule the world. Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa N Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, October 27th, Sunday, October 28th for those of you on the East Coast and beyond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. I hope you guys had a rockin' week, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, TessaTNT, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. We are 150,000 strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read Encounter online, dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. So tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, we are talking to and getting to know Mr. D.A. Roberts. And he is actually an author. D.A. Roberts is an author of fiction, primarily in the horror, dystopian, and science fiction genres. Born in Lebanon, Missouri, he now lives in Springfield, Missouri, and with his wife and sons. When not writing, D.A. serves his community in law enforcement. Best known for his Ragnarok Rising saga, he blends the zombie genre with elements of Norse mythology. This is a unique approach that creates a new subgenre in apocalyptic fiction. Debuting in July of 2012, the series has been featured on radio shows on 3 continents. He is also known in science fiction for the Infinite Black series, and this series is based on the hit video game from Spellbook Studio. Approached by Spellbook Studio to create the history of their universe, D.A.'s series explores the rich tapestry that is the Infinite Black. Hey D.A., thanks for joining us tonight. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad to be here.
No worries. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you, and what led you to this path you're on right now?
Well, my bio hit the salient points, but I'm predominantly just a hillbilly from the hills of Missouri. I grew up on a farm north of here, about an hour north of where I'm at currently, outside a little town called Lebanon, farm country mostly. But I grew up listening to ghost stories and legends and lore from my mother, who was a huge horror fan, and just local legends and I've got family members that relayed stories of Native American lore, and I was just always fascinated from the time I was a young child, and I wanted to be a writer pretty much as long as I can remember. I've been fascinated with all kinds of horror stories, but growing up on a farm in the 70s, there wasn't a whole lot of options for television, so I read a lot, and reading different genres really kind of fueled my imagination. But as I grew older, I grew up deer hunting and taking hiking in the woods and camping, and over the years I've heard and seen things you just really can't normally explain. But again, that just fueled that imagination. I always wanted to write in an area the areas I grew up. So my horror stories will probably always be centered around the Ozark Highlands in this general area, featuring places I'm actually familiar with.
Yeah, I can feel you there, because most of my paranormal experiences, until these latter days, I've had an increase. Were back in Pettigrew, Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, in the northern hemisphere of Arkansas, basically. And, the Ozarks just seem to have so much spirit, so much activity going on. What kind of different things did you experience there as far as the paranormal?
Well, the Ozarks have always been steeped in lore. There's just not far from where I live called the Neosho Spook Light, and it's this light, this glowing light that will follow vehicles. And there's been tales of Momo, the Missouri version of Bigfoot, the Momo monster. There's ghost stories. There's just lots of lore around this area that date back to the pioneers. And some pretty amazing stories. I just grew up listening to them and loved those stories. Just outside the little town I lived in, there's a cemetery that if you go to the cemetery at night, you can see what looks to be a beating heart on one of the tombstones. You can't see it during the day, and you can only see it at night. And we used to think, oh, it's probably just reflected light from a radio tower or something. But we've seen it on cloudy nights when there was no visible light.
So it wasn't like a reflection, it was actually,
there
some
was
sort
something
of,
there.
Yeah, paranormal light. Interesting. Oh, and there was the other question I was going to ask. You were talking about Ozark lore and such. Did you also listen to Dr. Demento or Weird Al? Because I remember as a child falling asleep listening to Dr. Demento and him having Weird Al on, and just that kind of shaped my mind as far as openness and strangeness and whatnot. Did you have that experience as well?
Absolutely. I grew up on Dr. Demento. I remember when the Weird Al was first introduced, Another One Rides the Bus. Those are the shows I grew up on, listening to the radio at night. And I did the same thing, especially on school nights. I'd go to sleep with the radio on.
Yeah, it was funny. Me and my siblings, I had 4 other siblings, and we'd just gather around and listen to the show. And you would eventually fall to sleep, and I always had issues falling to sleep, I think due to my own paranormal experiences, but it really helped to soothe me and make me not feel so weird or outer bound or whatnot. Both Dr. Demento, the different stories he'd share, as well as Weird Al, and Another One Rides the Bus, and what was the other one? I'm Fat, Time Bad from Michael Jackson, and I can't remember what the other one was, but yeah.
Weird Al's had so many funny songs. I mean, there's tons of them.
And he just shaped the future of his field as well, as far as
exactly.
Comedic music and, just making you not feel so weird, because he was the epitome of weird.
Yes, and he embraced it.
So did you ever feel like you were on the outskirts of other people growing up in school or siblings or whatnot with things that you had witnessed or had happened to you as a child, or did you have paranormal experiences as a kid?
As a young child, I remember, and I was probably 3 or 4. My bedroom was just down the hall from my parents. I'm the youngest of 11 kids. But 2 of my older brothers were actually grown and moved out before I was born. Yeah, that's another story. But outside my bedroom window, every night for like a week, there was a screech owl would appear outside my window and just scream and holler. And I always thought it was weird because I was a small kid. That my parents wouldn't let me sleep in my room the nights that happened, and I used to wonder if it was something other than a screech owl, because screech owls, they can't hurt you, they just freak you out. I've heard them scream in the woods and it'll make your blood run cold, but I often wondered if that might have been something that my parents were afraid was trying to get in the window. Both of my parents are gone now. I of course can't ask them that, but it's just something that stuck with me as a kid. And I had an extremely active imagination, running around the fields and playing and just really enjoying being a kid on a farm. But so many things that are just really odd in the woods, especially at night. Sometimes you can hear something pacing outside of your vision, and it doesn't happen often, but you can tell when the woods go dead quiet. I've been sitting in deer stands and the woods just go absolutely silent, which is a good indicator there's a large predator around, and never see a sign of anything. Although I've never actually directly seen something, but I've had a number of times was being stalked any number of occasions.
My dad, he was actually born in Salt Lake City because my grandmother, Nova O'Brien, was traveling with her husband, who was doing oil sales back in the day, in the 1950s. And, but he was originally and raised in Arkansas, and he never really had a paranormal experience until shortly before he met my mother. His father had seen a spirit and shared that with them, but then he had his first paranormal experience after talking to her. But like you were saying with the owl, he was an avid reader. He could read through a Louis L'Amour or whatnot book in about 30 minutes. And he said one night that he heard this woman give out a blood-curdling scream. Well, me thinking back on it, I'm thinking that wasn't a paranormal experience. It was most likely a panther, which I had seen black panthers, actually seen a black panther on the pig trail in Arkansas. We have mountain lions over here in Colorado, and supposedly black panthers don't exist, but I know I saw it with my own eyes, and I'm thinking that's what he heard, but it totally ran him out of the house. But I could see a mother being protective over a screech owl, and do you know any sort of message or anything that a screech owl would convey? As far as
a lot of Native American lore, screech owl, an owl appearing is usually a messenger of death.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking was native lore, because, during this, and you do, or secure night security as well as far as management, but during my graveyard shift with night security, first night I ran into this skunk probably 6 or 7 times. And the first time I ran into him, I was doing a walk around the clubhouse, which is, they have different kitchens and they have a workout room, and the pool is in the back, which isn't completely built, but they have this awesome pool and hot tub that they're creating. And I was coming back towards my truck, and all of a sudden I hear somebody walking up behind me, and I'm like, great, somebody's going to jump me. Because there's all kinds of Hispanics and other people working this job, and I don't know anyone, and I'm like the only woman on this job site, and I thought somebody was walking up behind me, so I just slowly turned instead of like panicking and turning, and there was a skunk maybe 6 inches behind me, and he continued to walk down this hill, and I run into him almost every night, but the skunk, the fox, the raccoon, and also a couple kittens first night and just a couple nights ago. but there was different messages behind it, and it was funny how those messages of native lore really added up to what was going on in my life at that time. So that was pretty interesting, and I love hearing all those different perspectives and getting their ideals, and it is amazing when it lines up. Do you find that anything happened in your life due to the owl that might have added up to what they were saying in native lore?
I don't know if that's really, hovered over me my entire life, but it's something that I've always remembered. Everybody loses people in their life, so I can't really associate that to the owl. But it's just a fact of nature that people in your life will pass away eventually. So I don't know if I could associate anything paranormal to the owl other than the fact that it just stuck with me as so bizarre. Like you were saying, you can hear things walking behind you. I've heard that, and at times I've turned around. There's absolutely been nothing there, which tends to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up pretty tall.
Yeah, that's worse than finding something. I agree. You're like, what was that? Like, you can't explain it, so it's still that question in your mind. And when people walk up behind you, I was a Marine. I've always been perceptive to my surroundings, and when people walk up on me, like, I turn around when they're trying to surprise me or scare me or whatnot and catch them before they do it. Do you ever find you feel that energy, whether there's something there or not, that just, something's there?
Well, after years in law enforcement, you kind of develop this intuitive sense when somebody's looking at you, and you'll just become aware that somebody's watching you. You start looking around. I've had that feeling happen in the middle of the woods, that I was being watched, and it's kind of an odd feeling. And I've learned not to ignore that feeling because it's seldom wrong.
Well, yeah, and when your hairs raise up, you just can't deny that. Like, that's an instinct.
That's your subconscious telling you.
Yeah, your subconscious, or that general instinct that, was bred back way, way, way back in the past when predators would approach. The hair on their arms would stand up, and that was one of their key, noticing that things are happening. Something's watching you, something's preying upon you. And the gut instinct, like I've found, has never led me wrong. And so I've learned to really listen to that. Ignore your heart, ignore your brain. Like, you can listen to little things here and there, but mainly your gut is going to lead you in the right direction.
Yeah, trust your gut always.
Indeed. So you said you've always loved writing. Actually was published as a grade schooler for writing poetry and short stories and such. Did you start at a really young age with your writing?
I found some of my stuff that my mother kept after she passed away, stuff that I wrote when I was really young, and it was horrible. I'm not too proud to admit it. It was truly horrible. But I've wanted to be a writer since I was in grade school. I mean, I used to write short stories, and I did have some success in having a few poetry contests and winning a couple poetry contests and being published. But it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I had my first major publication with a novel. And I'm still going from there. I mean, I want to be like, trying to think of the name of the author, the guy that wrote The Road, Cormac McCarthy. Cormac's 95 and he's still writing books. So I hope to be like Cormac.
Yeah, it's always good to have someone to look up to and, to rate yourself upon. But I always try to beat myself, not like
exactly.
Literally beat myself up, but, surpass what I've done before and just keep growing and growing.
And you can't really base your success off anybody else's. Everybody's journey, especially in the literary world, is an individual journey. And the only thing you can really do is try to be better than you were the day before.
That is so true. So, when was your first paranormal experience? I'm sorry, I think I asked that from the get-go, but what is the thing that etched into your mind to put you on this path? Like, have you gone out and investigated Bigfoot, or are you going by stories that you've heard from locals or friends or whatnot? Have you had that personal experience that led you this direction?
I had some unexplainable encounters in the woods that I wasn't sure what it was. I mean, I've hunted most things that you can that you can hunt in North America. But I've had some things that I just didn't know what it was. A friend of mine and I were camping near a river one night, and we heard something scream directly across the river from us. And this was no animal I'd ever heard. It was unbelievably loud. We never saw it. Never saw actually what was making the screaming, but it was loud, and it was less than 50 yards from us. And down the river, maybe a quarter of a mile, was a field, and immediately as soon as that thing screamed, the cattle went crazy, and we could hear them making their way across the field. So we packed up, jumped in the truck, and took off. But that really freaked me out. But I've always loved things like that, and maybe I'm just wired wrong. I don't know, but I love things like that. I've never actively gone out, quote unquote, hunting Bigfoot. I read a lot on the subject, but it's something I would love to do. I mean, other than actually going out deer hunting and having odd experiences and having family members that have had odd experiences, I've never directly just hunted Bigfoot, which I would love to do. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the only direct experience I had with it was we went up to Rico, Colorado, and we were investigating the Enterprise Bar and Grill, and we had a full night. I mean, I didn't even barely sleep being there because of all the noises and such, but we had done a security job up the mountain right across from where the Enterprise was, and there were boulders not falling from the side of the mountain but being thrown off the side of the mountain and, doing their big leaps and jumps until they hit the riverbed, and trying to chase off security because we were in his area. He was just used to it, being active during the day and being able to do his nocturnal stuff at night, and we were really putting a nudge in his, what he would generally do. And so we went up there the next day, and I found footprints. I didn't have a plaster cast kit or anything like that, so I just took pictures of my foot next to this footprint in the gravelly dirt, and while the rest of my team was collecting rocks. But yeah, it was interesting. And then we went down to the Enterprise Bar and Grill, had lunch, and there was this mother and daughter that have coffee every morning on the back porch, and they said one morning they were out there having coffee, and all of a sudden, not just a Bigfoot, but an albino Bigfoot crossed between this patch that was in the aspen trees and pines. And, it had large, broad steps. It only took about 4 steps when it would take us like 10 to 14 to get across this, pathway. So that was pretty interesting that they had also seen something, not only a Bigfoot, but albino. But I'm wondering, would it be the same one because it was on the total opposite direction as where we had investigated?
Well, I firmly believe that these creatures are out there. I have no doubt. I mean, it makes sense. We discover new species all the time, but if these creatures are indeed out there, they would have a very broad range, because they would have to be basically like the great apes. They would have to be omnivorous. I'm sure that they do eat meat to a large extent, but they would also forage. And in order to forage on an animal that large, it would need a pretty big browsing area.
Well, yeah, and my niece has taught me you can actually peel the outside scales of a blue spruce pine cone and eat the meaty, like nutty sort of inside of it. So that could be a large part of their diet, plus all the leafy things that grow up there until wintertime. And then even the deer eat bark off of certain trees and different things like that just to survive or get by. You could even dig up roots if you had to. But, I don't think that they'd be mainly carnivorous. Like, you have to have that vegetative intake and be able to live off the land. And I've heard people say Bigfoot generally keep their groups small. Have you heard of any large groups? Generally, it's like maybe 4 is the most I've heard of together, 4 or 5.
I've only heard of small family groups. I've never heard of like a quote-unquote clan. But in this area, that mostly the encounters that I've talked to people about and heard about are individuals. the woods in the Missouri Basin, along the Mississippi and along the Missouri rivers are not as thick as you would find in the Pacific Northwest. So I would think it would probably require a much broader area to browse for food. So we don't have the thick, lush rainforests here, but we do have some pretty dense forests. So I would say the family groups by necessity would have to be smaller, or they would run themselves out of a food source.
Yeah, I agree. And it's pretty intriguing and smart of them to, keep their groups small. I mean, a lot of people have, like, you had a very large family. My mom had 13 kids in her family. So when you said that number, I was like, wow, that's like old school numbers as far as family size. Were you raised LDS, or what was the meaning behind that? Was it just like farm living, or
basically just farm living? My parents were older. My mom and my dad were both born in the 1920s, so they were kind of the tail end of that old generation.
Oh wow.
My dad fought in World War II, and it just basically the military and cops is pretty much all we've ever done, other than the dad having the farm. But he didn't work the farm full time. He worked the farm when he got off work. So it was a by and large a family affair. We all pitched in, and it's just something that I miss living on a farm. But at the same time, I don't think I've really got the drive to have a working farm. But I do still love to spend as much time out in the woods as I can.
Yeah, it really was a hard way to live. Like you said, your dad also had a regular job as well as his farming job, and it does take the whole family to do it. It's not just the mom and dad doing it, it's the mom and dad and the kids. And I find that kids these days have a hard time wrapping their mind around it. Like, my daughter's like, all I have to do is clean my room and I'm good. Nobody else does more than that. And I'm like, you need to come into the realm right now. That's a nice little fantasy you got going on there, but this is a team thing, or like you were saying, a clan thing, and we're supposed to work together and not just one single person carrying everybody. And the world is just so much different now, and it is a harder way of living. You work that job, then you come home and farm and till the ground and weed and all the other fun stuff. Milk the cow, neuter the bulls, kill the chickens, so much different things. Did you ever learn on the farm witching for water?
I've known people that have done that. I've seen it done. It's not something I could do myself, but I've seen people use divining rods to find water, and it's shockingly accurate.
Yeah, my granny, she showed us how to do it with a stick, and I've heard apple, willow, oak, a couple other ones are best for doing that. And then in, I believe it was 2013, went to Vegas and had my first experience with the copper dowsing rods, and I remember how immense the energy felt, and the effect it had on my body the very first time I did it. Like, I was shaking from my toes to my head, and it was just insane, the energy that was going through me. But I found that it's very accurate. Have you used regular dowsing rods or old school wooden dowsing rods, or have you just had experience with friends that have?
I've never actually done it personally, but for a while we lived in New Mexico for a few years when I was young, and I've seen it done down there. That the ranchers would bring someone out to use the dowsing rods to find the best place to drill a well for water for the cattle. And like I said, it's shockingly accurate how they would take them right to a spot where they would dig and put a windmill in to bring up water for their cattle.
Yeah, I actually ordered a book on it after I'd had my first experience, and I was like, I want to know more about this field, how people actually use it, and manipulate it is another word for it. And the book I bought, I was so disappointed because it was just talking about failure after failure after failure, and there wasn't, a hit and miss sort of thing. It was mostly, this is not accurate at all, but I've known people within my own family and beyond that have had very awesome, accurate experience with it. So I was like, why did I even waste $14 on this book?
I try to avoid any of the books that just basically try to paint everything out to be, oh, this can't happen. There's no scientific basis, because belief is a powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And I've seen things that people claim won't work. I've seen them work. And it's kind of astounding. I've heard of people that have survived things that just should have killed them instantly, and walked away. And it's things like that makes you really question the nature of what we really know. There's definitely a lot of mysteries out there we haven't figured out.
Yeah, so true. And I try to keep open-minded, but I find a lot of people, due to their beliefs, are so close-minded you can't even, you'd be better off talking to a wall than talking to them. But Kat in the chat room was wondering, did you see any UFOs on the farm?
I don't recall ever seeing one. My wife, she had a UFO experience when she was a young girl, and one followed her family all the way from Bolivar, Missouri, back to Springfield, Missouri. And as soon as they hit the city limits of Springfield, it took off. She said it was just like not far from their car, and paced the car the entire way into town, which is about 40 miles. So it wasn't the lights of Bolivar as they left the city. There was no way it was a street light, because it stayed in the same spot for 40 miles.
That's amazing. And my dad used to tell me about UFOs all the time as a kid. And I remember one time in Arkansas, we were driving down this highway. I don't know where exactly we were, because we did travel so much. But he pulled over on the side of the road. All these cars were pulled over, and there's these lights approaching. They're in perfect formation. And until they were right above us, we couldn't tell that they were just a formation of helicopters. And so then we were like, oh, yeah, it was just helicopters, and we moved along. But my dad was really into it. I remember he was selling one of those old, like, mystic books from, I don't know if it was Discovery Channel or History, or even an offshoot of National Geographic, some of the awesome books that they used to have. But he was selling one on UFOs and aliens, and I still have it in my book collection today. I was like, heck no, we're not selling this. But I didn't really have my first UFO experience until 2012, and I would see first time was it seemed like a small orb of fire. It had yellow, orange, and red going through it, but it was about probably 45 feet off the ground. And then the second time I saw it, it was about a year later, and it was closer. So it looked like it was 3 or 4 feet in diameter, but still the same description. It looked like liquid fire flowing through this cylindrical orb, and yellow, orange, and red. And it just moved at a slow walking pace about 4 feet off the ground. And, people are like, why can't you get pictures of Bigfoot or skinwalkers or Dogman or all this other stuff? Like, I've been trying to get a picture of the skunk and raccoon and fox on this job site, and I can't get my phone to picture phase soon enough before they skitter out of the way. I finally got a picture of the fox, blurry, and a good picture of the skunk. But otherwise, it's like, how do you really gather that information? You get so awestruck and surprised that the skunk didn't spray you in the face, or the raccoon didn't bite you, or the fox didn't steal your food. And then you finally get your wits about you, and you can't really pull it up in time. I find it awesome when people can actually pull it off, getting pictures of these things. I've only accidentally got UFO pictures.
I can completely understand that, because even professional wildlife photographers will sometimes spend weeks out in the wilderness trying to capture pictures of grizzly bears, and we know they exist. You can see grizzly bears in zoos. So how much of a leap of faith is that to think that even that an amateur photographer going out in the woods to try to capture something that doesn't want to be captured in the first place, how are they going to get a picture of that? We're not professional photographers by any stretch. And I know most of us, if we go out go out in the woods, we're probably carrying nothing more than a cell phone camera. And these guys that like shoot for National Geographic will go out with these monstrous telephoto lenses and these multiple camera setups, and even they have difficulty capturing some of these endangered animals on film.
Yeah, it's so difficult, and they really aren't like lightning fast. It's just by the time you get it up, it's just crazy. And Trip's asking, we can show on commercials every half hour. No, Dave is on a special schedule because he's going through this total different experience than me, and I'm on the old schedule. So I only do commercials at the end of the first hour and the end of the second hour. So you guys can just sit back and relax and not even worry about all the all the commercial breaks, which I enjoy them. It gives me time to eat or hit the head or whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So no real UFO or alien experiences in your life?
No, not that I can recall. No missing lapses of time. I have seen military aircraft that I wasn't sure what they were until they got close enough.
Mm-hmm.
You see it from a distance and you hear it making an odd noise, or flying in an area you don't normally see aircraft, but until it gets close enough where you can identify it. Well, UFO by nature of the word is unidentified flying object. I mean, it's just something in the air that you can't identify what it is. But everything that I've ever seen has been something I could later identify. My experiences have all been more along the lines of things pacing us in the woods, creepy experiences in houses, kind of few creepy experiences while on duty.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you fill us in on a little bit about that? I love creepy stories and things that are just out of this realm.
Well, I work in hospital security right now as primary. I'm a overnight supervisor for a hospital here in town, and the overnight security officers, their job to sign out bodies out of the morgue to the funeral homes.
Oh,
well, one night I got called down. It was about 2:00 in the morning, and I go down to release a body to a funeral home, and I open the cooler, and there's literally that one body in the cooler, which is not normal. I mean, it's a pretty big cooler. So I'm releasing the only body in the cooler. I pull it out, verify the tow tag with the paperwork, make sure, even though it's the only one in there, I'm not releasing the incorrect body.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to load it up. Well, inside the cooler are two cages, steel cages that are lockable, which is where we lock autopsies to maintain chain of custody. Well, neither of the cages were locked because there were no bodies in them. I shut the door to the cooler and go to help the guy from the funeral home move the body over to his gurney, and I hear one of those cages start slamming open and shut inside the cooler.
Oh, jeez.
So I go back over to the cooler and duck in, open the door and step inside, and I can see where it's been hitting the wall. I can see the marks on it, and there's nobody in there. And I'm like, what the heck? That's weird. So I verify there's nobody in the cooler. I shut the cooler, turn the light off to the cooler again, turn back around, and it starts up again. And the guy from the funeral home goes, well, I'm out of here. And he heads out the door with the gurney, and I turned the lights off and left as well. But there was clearly something in that cooler. Nothing I could see, but there was something in there.
Yeah, I think I would have tried to chase him down and throw him back and close the door on him. Like, you work here. What the heck are you doing running off? I couldn't imagine.
He beat me out the door.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that job. I had a friend that was a coroner's assistant and worked at a funeral home, and he ended up taking his own life. And I had often wondered, like, how does he do that? I mean, it's hard. I don't know. I've experienced death all my life since I was about 5-6 years old, and I kind of feel like I was meant to be there for people that are dying or whatnot. So it's become somewhat normal to me, but I can't imagine working on the body and all of the different things that happen in that field, because the paranormal to me is so real. Like, I don't know. Have they told you stories about different strange things that have happened in a funeral home?
I've had some of them tell me, of course you hear the old tales about the body setting up, which is just muscle contractions. He says it doesn't happen often, but once in a while it does. But also apparently it's fairly common for the corpses to moan as the air escapes their lungs, which I think would probably send me out the door in a hurry.
Yeah, I think it's called the death breath or something like that. Like
Yeah.
that little last bit, once the other chemicals and gases are expanding, it kind of compresses on the lungs and sends that weird sort of moaning sound out of the body. I actually got to go to the movies this last Friday night, and I don't even remember the last time I went, but I got to watch the new Halloween. Did you get to go see that?
I have not seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it, but I haven't seen it yet. I don't get to go watch many movies in the theater anymore.
Yeah, me neither. So it was a treat for me. And I was so tired from doing night shift all the nights before, but I held my ground and hung in there, and it was interesting. It was different than what I had expected, and I'm not going to put any movie spoilers out there for anybody, but I don't know. I kind of think I would have saved that for being home alone, and where you really get that creep factor going on, and, you know, is somebody outside? What was that noise?
Yeah, I think horror films are best enjoyed in your living room anyway. Yeah, you can get scared in a movie theater, but yeah, horror films really don't have the maximum creepy effect until you're sitting in the living room with just you and your spouse watching a movie, and it's 2:00 in the morning and the house is completely quiet and there's no one else there. You don't really get that full creepy effect until you hear a board creak in the kitchen behind you or something like that.
Yeah, or the branches scratching on the window, or I remember as a kid.
Or the dog sits up and starts barking.
Yeah, nothing. You're like, what is it? What's going on? Who's out there? As a kid, you know, me and my siblings were raised on scary movies. My mom would bring home scary movies on the weekend because she loved them, and she was actually able to talk to the dead, hear the dead, see the dead, so many different things, and I wish that I had known her later in my years, because she did have so much to share, and I feel like she was that spiritual side of me that, you know, I could be much further than I am right now. But I even find myself today turning on the YouTube and, you know, watching the top 15 scary stories or top 15 scary sightings and Bigfoot sightings and stuff like that. And I go to sleep watching scary stuff. It puts me at ease and helps me to go to sleep when other people would stay up all night freaking out about every creak and groan in the house. But do you find that you're comforted by scary movies, or is that part of you, what you do?
I don't find scary movies as creepy as a lot of people. They've really got to go above and beyond to really kick in my creep factor. Movies that are more like a psychological scare, those will get to you. But I don't really fall for jump scares much anymore because they've been so overdone. I think in most horror films anymore, the writers have just gotten lazy. They count on the jump scare, and they count on the special effects to really convey the horror, when you're not really getting the really in-depth stories, the well-thought-out characters that we used to get. And I kind of miss that. It's something I try to bring back in my writing. I want my horror to be horrific. I don't want it to be something that would be referenced in pop culture. I want it to be scary.
Yeah. Actually scare you out of the room scary. I remember when I was watching it on Friday night, the preview for the makers of The Conjuring, it's a new one, I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was this one scene that I actually jumped during the preview, and I was like, holy shnikes, because it just had that jolt factor. You're expecting, you know, this little kid to run up to you, and then all of a sudden it's a man, like, basically grabbing your head and assaulting you. That really freaked me out. But Jason, it was cool, and they kind of went back to the old Jason, a couple little things. You know, they had the original guy that was there on the case, and they had Jamie Lee Curtis in there. And I kept saying, Activia! Because she's the Activia lady, putting that humor in there. But, yeah, it was interesting. But they do have a lot of awesome scary movies coming up, and I'm looking forward to that. But, yeah, anybody listening out there, I don't want to downgrade the movie scene, but I would save that one for sitting at home eating your popcorn so you can throw it all over the place or whatnot. But it was a good movie. I would watch it. It was just different than what I had expected. I expected Jamie Lee Curtis to really tear this guy up, and supposedly they got rid of him in the end, but, you know, there's always that chance that he made it out and there's going to be a part 2 to the Halloween as it has been before in past years.
Well, supposedly they got rid of him in the first movie, but that didn't really take.
Right? Why won't you just die? Like Austin Powers says. Come on. What is up with that guy? When I saw his profile and I was looking at the back of his head, I'm just picturing Anthony Hopkins from Silence of the Lambs or whatnot. But he's too tall to be Anthony Hopkins, so maybe they just put Anthony Hopkins' head on somebody. But I'm like, that's totally Anthony Hopkins, but he's too tall. Who is that guy? And how do you get the part where you don't have to say anything? You just have to walk around and stare at people, and you don't have to remember any lines. You just have to chop and hack.
It's funny that you bring up Silence of the Lambs, because Thomas Harris, the writer that created that book series and created Hannibal Lecter, he really struck a nerve with me, because the thing about Hannibal Lecter that really always freaks me out is because, well, one, he's just absolutely brilliant, but it's everyday human crazy, and it's stuff that you can run into any given day on the street, and I think that's what really bothers me the most about it, is because the reality of it, how real it could be. I know, Hannibal the Cannibal, we're probably not going to see too many cannibals running around, but he's based he's loosely based on like 2 different real serial killers. One of them which did eat his victims. So they're out there. I mean, they're legitimately out there.
Yeah, my husband actually wanted to name my son Hannibal, and I was like, you're out of your ever-loving mind. And he's like, no, not after Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, but the Conqueror Hannibal back in the day. And I'm like, no, I'm still not going for it, because everybody these days is going to go back and say it's Hannibal Lecter from this movie, because, they're actually taking history out of schools. And so kids aren't even going to know these things. And so they're going to think, oh, the Psycho Hannibal from horror movies. And my son is already going through enough as it is.
Although, historically, Hannibal the Carthaginian general was a brilliant guy. I mean, that's a good, strong name.
Yeah, he was a great and powerful conqueror. And I was looking at Greek names, but we ended up going with Floyd from Pink Floyd because we're so inspired.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
Indeed.
I love their music.
Yeah, I hadn't planned on having another child, but we did, which was good because I have an 18-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So he would have been all alone with 2 codgers once he gets so old. So I was actually, like, with him, I cried for 2 weeks, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm having another kid. I'm almost out of the woods. And then, when she came along, I was happy because he wouldn't be alone. And everybody's like, what, are you going to name her Pink? But we named her Lily after one of my great-grandmothers, which I found out later on. Names just come to me with my kids. Do you ever have that internal instinct or gut instinct on certain things?
Not on names. I can't really say that anything like that ever happened with me. But I have had times when you just, something tells you not to go a certain direction or not to do a certain thing, and it's just those weird moments. I've had those happen a few times in my life. The hair on the back of your neck stands up, and something in your gut tells you to not do that. And I've had that happen a number of times.
Yeah, or you generally go a certain way to and from work, and you decide, I'm going to go this way instead. And then there's a terrible accident, and you're like, well, that could have been me. You always got to listen to that still small voice and trust and believe in yourself. And, I think we are our greatest guides. We're coming up on less than 10 minutes till our first break, and I'm looking forward to talking to these different things with you as far as dystopian future, Bigfoot, Dogman, and the siege on Lockett Ranch, as far as also types of creatures, hostile versus peaceful. So we got a lot of good stuff. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to this first hour as far as who you are, or how our listeners can find you and find your books?
I was an independent author. All my Ragnarok books and my sci-fi books were all available through Amazon. But I recently, with just a couple months ago, was picked up by a publishing company called J. Ellington Ashton Press, and they signed all of my existing titles and then signed me for several future titles. So all of my books are currently out of print as JEA is rebranding and recovering, putting new covers and new edits. So my series should be relaunched within the next couple of months, as soon as JEA gets them completed and relaunched. And I've got several other projects going for them. One is a werewolf series that I want to do. I've been leaning more toward making it an actual Dogman as opposed to a werewolf story. I want something that's just truly terrifying, and that legend just keeps calling to me.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier about how all of these stories are like more horrific than things you've seen in movies, and I often say to people, like, truth is stranger than fiction. Like, all these things that happen in real life, you can't make up. You can't make this up. So it's amazing, all the experiences that I've heard from, and I love hearing everybody's, outlooks on things and their different experiences and what's actually out there, because, most of the populace has no clue. They're so wrapped up in making the money and, pleasing Uncle Sam and all this other fun stuff. But, there are so many weird things out there that I've experienced through my life. So yeah, you can't make this stuff up. And then when people can't grasp it, it's like, how do you not know?
Exactly. Just like you said, some people just go through life with a closed mind. And I think if your mind and your heart are closed, then you're never going to experience anything like that, simply because you've already denied its existence before you've had a chance to see it. If you're that closed off to accepting that we don't know everything in the universe, if you think that everything like this has a scientific explanation, you're probably going to always find some sort of explanation, even if it's grasping at straws. They're really never going to allow themselves to feel that this is more than I'm seeing, more than I'm understanding. They're not going to connect on a more subconscious level.
So did you find as a kid, writing your stories or sharing certain stories with other kids, did you feel kind of like an outcast, or like people didn't accept you, or these things you were sharing were kind of frowned upon?
I've always felt like I was, a bit of an outsider. I was kind of an odd kid. I spent more time in books than I did, doing other things that most kids do. I preferred solo activities. Deer hunting is a solo activity. You don't see people going out in groups to do that. I've always felt more comfortable alone, more at ease alone, and I can't really associate that to anything other than just being an individual. One of my teachers in high school wrote in my yearbook that I was a fierce individual, that I valued my individuality above pretty much everything else, and I've always agreed with that. I do admire, I do value my individuality, and I don't really want to conform to the pack, so to speak. So I have always found myself being kind of on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and they often say the road less traveled is the one you should seek. And, kids do feel, and I found this with my own kids, as if they're an outcast and they don't fit in, they're not popular, and they're not this and they're not that. And I'm just trying to tell them, embrace who you are, because there's only one you, and you're here for a reason. And it's so important to embrace that and love yourself, and not put yourself down like everyone else is, because you are really your own worst critic. And it's hard to get past that sometimes, but to embrace it and run with it and be able to do what you're doing is pretty awesome.
That's absolutely true. I mean, you can never really be comfortable in any aspect in your life until you're comfortable in your own skin. You've got to be comfortable with who you are. And that's a lesson I kind of took to heart a long time ago. I'm always going to be who I am. I'm not gonna fix that or change that for anybody. I like who I am, and I intend to stay that way. And that's one of the things that my wife and I kind of attracted ourselves to each other, is because we're both very individual people, but we work very well together. And she didn't try to change me. I didn't try to change her. We just connected.
Yeah, I often say, I worked long and hard to be this weird, so you just better appreciate it. I am weird. I can admit that. But yeah, it is important to do that, not only to accept yourself, but to love yourself. And a lot of people find it difficult to find love out there, but you have to truly be able to love yourself and feel comfortable being with yourself before you can actually find somebody to complement your happiness. Don't find somebody to complete it, but find somebody to complement it. And I'm so glad you guys found each other. That's so rare. I mean, so rare to find your soulmate.
We've been married 25 years.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
So we have about 45 seconds left. Can you share with our listeners your website and whatnot, some way to find you?
Yeah, you can find release information for my books on jlintonashton.com, which is the website for my publisher, or you can find me on Facebook and Twitter at D.A. Roberts Author.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm so glad that, you reached out to us and that I get to have you on the show, because I'm looking forward to picking your brain. And I know the first hour I kind of, tried to get to know who you are and what made you who you are. And, it's kind of slow moving the first hour because people are still filing in. But, second hour, I want to know about this dystopian future and all these other things that you're writing about. I'm very intrigued. But on that note, we're going to go to our first break. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Hey, guess what? You can now get your brand new Spaced Out Radio swag at spacedoutradio.com. We've brought the store back with all new items for you to pick out and pick up for yourself, your family, or friends. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, we got it all. All you have to do is head to our website and click on Store. Choose what you want and it's shipped to you. The Spaced Out Radio store is right there for you. Come shop with us at spacedoutradio.com. Then we can own the night together.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
If you're heading to Vancouver, make sure you stop by the official bar of Spaced Out Radio, the Moose Vancouver. It's the place to party in YVR. At the corner of Nelson and Granville, the Moose Vancouver is always up to speed with a kitchen staff that serves great food. All food on the menu, $6.95 to $8.95. There's a reason the Moose Vancouver is recognized as one of the hottest spots on the West Coast. Get your horns up for the Moose Vancouver.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch. Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT, on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, back to Spaced Out Weekend host, Tessa Nicole Thomas.
Here's a sound again, voices dancing in my head, smile wide, drowning slowly as the echo.
Well, I need to look up that song and see which Bumblefoot song that is, because that's a new one on me, but it's quite nice. It's got a nice groove to it. But tonight we have author D.A. Roberts on. D.A., welcome back, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks again for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit about this dystopian future?
Well, anyway, the world's working today. It's almost current events as opposed to dystopian. But having read 1984 years ago when I was in junior high, it's always kind of something that stuck with me. And dystopian is just, we used to, back in the 50s and 60s, everybody believed there was going to be a utopian future. for mankind. And we watched shows like Star Trek where we thought the future was going to be clean and everything was going to be great and technology was going to be the big savior. But now I think everybody's pretty much convinced it's going to be more like Mad Max Fury Road. It's a much darker interpretation of events that are yet to happen. It's a take at the world, and it makes us examine our own darker sides, and that's something I enjoy. It's holding up the mirror, and not everybody's going to enjoy what they see.
What exactly is dystopian?
Dystopian is a type of future. A dystopian is it's the exact opposite of utopian. Whereas a utopian view would be a future that's a paradise. Dystopian is where basically everything falls apart, where society collapses, where there's some sort of catastrophe, zombie apocalypse, giant meteor, any number of things. Any major civilization ending event. It's a dark future where everything's not clean and good. Everything is going to be far more difficult.
So perhaps it's like more disturbing.
Oh, definitely. It's one of those darker futures again, like Mad Max Fury Road, where civilization as we know it is gone. Things have fallen, and it's smaller pockets of humanity trying to exist. I enjoy that kind of setting because it really lets you branch out. It really lets you just go crazy with the setting and examine things that, as world as it could be, not as the world as it is.
Sorry. I read that you had been able to write stories to the beginning of certain video games. What exactly did you do there?
I got approached by the crew from Spellbook Studio because they enjoyed my zombie series, and they wanted me to create fiction set in the universe of the video game The Infinite Black. And I've started out doing that. I've got a couple of books in the pipe on that, and it's just something that I never really set out to do sci-fi. I had never really planned on adding that to my repertoire, but they approached me, and when a video game company asks you to write in their universe, that's not something that you just ignore. You don't say, I don't think I want to do that. It was an opportunity that fell in my lap, and I ran with it.
That's awesome when you do get those opportunities and you do get to kind of flex your creative muscle. I love watching The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, and Z World, Z Nation, all these different zombie movies that are going on, and there's actual studies that show that if the zombie apocalypse did happen, it would begin in Oregon. Have you read anything about the zombie apocalypse, how it could happen, where it would stem from?
Well, if you are a fan of that genre, every book's got their own take on it. Every TV series, we've ran the gamut from government experiments gone bad to radiation from space to unexplainable viruses. There's a lot of different explanations. But with my zombie series, I wanted to do something that was more unique. I wanted to make it my own, and that's why I blended in elements of Norse mythology. If you're familiar at all with Norse mythology, they have like a dozen names for different types of undead creatures, and they firmly believed in it. So when I started researching into the Norse, I started reading about Ragnarok, which is Viking Armageddon. It's the end of the world. And it says during Ragnarok that Loki would lead an army of the dead from hell against the world of men. And to me, that just sounded like a zombie apocalypse. I just needed to tweak it a little bit.
So BTO in the chat room is asking, what does DA feel about dystopian society and music like Rush 2112 and Dream Theater, The Astonishing?
I love that type of music. Rush is a fantastic band. 2112 is a fantastic album, and again, dystopian. You like Pink Floyd. Dark Side of the Moon is a very dystopian feel to it. It's it's a slightly different take, and it takes us a little bit out of our comfort zone. But when you listen to stuff like that, it can mold your mood. It can shape how you're seeing things, and that's why I always listen to music when I write. I will listen to different bands. For one particular scene, I might listen to something like Disturbed. If I'm doing a combat scene, a fight scene, or if I'm just writing something dramatic, you might find me listening to, I don't know, Rachmaninoff's Cello Sonata in G minor. My music tastes vary, and they're very widely organized. I mean, I listen to a little bit of everything on any given day. But music has always been such a great motivator. It's such a shaper of mood. It embodies so much feeling that we would be foolish to discount its effect on humans, on us, on our psyche. And I love to listen to all kinds of music, especially when I'm writing.
Yeah, it is interesting how it does kind of feed your mind and help that creative flow go. And I do love Pink Floyd, and there's a lot of different artists which aren't really in my genre. Like when I mention them, people are like, you weren't even alive then. Well, I might not have been, but that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate them. And they do help you like reach that certain plateau where you need to go to write or feel certain things. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it's certain music's if I have a bad day in uniform, I come home, take off the body armor, I might listen to something like the Goldberg Variations, just something to relax. Or if I feel particularly down, I might listen to something a little more uplifting. It just depends. Music speaks to us on such an instinctual, primitive level that I truly enjoy different types of music for different reasons because of the emotions they inspire. And it's something I plan to always do with my writing. I could probably point out chapter and verse in all the books I've read. This is the kind of music I was listening to when I wrote this, or this particular song is what I was listening to. And if you listen to that music, you'll feel the flavor that I was wanting to put into that writing.
Sorry, I had my mic muted. So who did you like to draw from? Like, who did you listen to when you were writing?
My musical tastes run the gamut. When I write, it just depends on the scene I'm writing. Like if I'm doing combat scenes, I listen to a lot of heavy metal or industrial. Rammstein's a particular favorite. Disturbed. It varies. Metallica. It just depends on the scene I'm writing. More creepy scenes, I'll listen to stuff that inspires that mood. A lot of techno music or electronica. A good one that really just kind of puts that ethereal quality in the air is I listen to like Enya, a lot of Celtic music. I'll listen to that as I'm writing dramatic scenes, and it changes with the subject what I'm writing.
That's awesome. Do you ever get into Iron Maiden or Pink Floyd or perhaps the Beatles?
I'm not a Beatles fan. Never really liked them, and probably never will. But I love Iron Maiden. I like Pink Floyd. I like Rush. Just so many bands. Jethro Tull. There's just so many great bands out there. Even bands that were around from way before I was born. Just because it's 30, 40, 50-year-old music doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. And having older siblings, they really kind of affected my musical taste growing up because I listened to everything from the Mamas and the Papas all the way up to REO Speedwagon, and then moving into my own musical tastes as I entered my teens in the early 80s. And it just really gave me a much broader appreciation for music.
And they do say that music is...
Absolutely.
And I keep muting myself. Everybody out there that was listening, I was saying music is the universal language, and D.A. agreed. And I know that they sent a record out for the Allens or the Aliens to listen to get a idea or a feel of who we are. Do you have any idea what songs were on that track?
I couldn't tell you, but I could think of a few that probably should have been. I think pretty much just everything from The Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. That whole album's just so vibrant. I think that'd be a great choice to send, or possibly classical music, anything. Mozart's Great Mass. There's just so many amazing pieces of music that have been written down through the centuries. I don't know if I could come up with one seminal piece of music, one all-encompassing piece of music that sums up humanity, but there's so much music out there that defines what it is to be human.
Yeah, Rano is saying Floyd sucks, and I just have to disagree. We can agree to disagree on this one, because The Wall was so great to me, but everybody has their different things that they love, and, I've gotten into arguments. The Wall, The Dark Side of the Moon, blah, blah, blah. I prefer The Wall. People say that it's depressing, but I enjoy it. I love the emotion and everything, like the picture that's painted in my head, even before I got to see The Wall, as far as the animated version that they had out on video. And that was pretty interesting when I finally saw that. But it is amazing how it leads us and drives us and puts these different ideals and stories into our head.
I like The Wall, and I like Dark Side of the Moon. Excuse me. But I think, honestly, my favorite Pink Floyd album is probably Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that album. There's a lot of emotion in it.
Yeah, I bought that one too. I actually bought a large set, and then it never came, and then I figured out that my card didn't go through. So I went out to Tween Lakes, which was at least 30 miles out, just to get it, and wasted so much gas money expecting it. And then I finally found out the charge didn't go through. But I wish I would have gotten that because it was such a huge set. So you got a lot of different writings here, and one of them is Bigfoot, Dogman connections, and horror in real life. What can you tell us about Bigfoot and Dogman?
Well, the greatest thing about horror as a genre is it's all based on things that scare us, especially things that frighten us on an instinctual or primitive level. And the Bigfoot Dogman the whole mystique behind that is that if we were to encounter these, it's going to be a very primitive fear. I mean, it's going to be something that dates back to the earliest days of fire, when when they would huddle around the fire to keep the things in the darkness at bay. These are the things that go bump in the night, and these are the things that terrify people. And for these to be able to use real life stories or real life encounters of Bigfoot and Dogman as a basis for a horror novel, that just adds such a deep psychological connection to it. It would definitely scare the crap out of a lot of people. I know it would me.
For sure, and like you were saying, on that primitive level, you just, like you were saying, in the woods, you feel like something's watching you. You can't see it, but it can see you. Is it a panther? Is it a bear? Is it a Bigfoot? Like, these are all prey-type individuals. And your life is truly in danger, especially when you're in rutting season or mating season or whatnot. And Max is laughing at me because I muted myself. We have the curse of the mute button. You haven't been muted, but I actually muted myself a couple times. So can you tell us any stories as far as Kansas? Do they call it Bigfoot, or is it the swamp ape, or what do they refer to it as in Missouri or Mississippi?
In Missouri, when the sightings first started appearing in the 60s and 70s, they called it Momo, the Missouri monster. And there are still sightings of that, especially up around Louisiana, Missouri, which is north of here. People still have sightings. I mean, as recently as just a few months ago, and it's more and more people find themselves coming into a wilderness habitat, be it for deer hunting or hiking, and a lot of people are starting to enjoy more outdoor events, mountain biking, for example. A lot of people like to take up nature photography, And I think we're going to see an increase in sightings, or at least encounters where people aren't sure what it was. But I've read encounters online of people of Dogman sightings in Missouri, but I don't know of any firsthand. And it's something I would like to explore. It's something I would like to get out and look for and see what I can find.
Well, I think that things are more and more scarce as far as the environment is kind of going loco, and certain things aren't growing, certain things are dying off. Elk and mule deer or whatnot are sparse, and so have you heard about that story in Seattle where 2 mountain bikers went out and a mountain lion attacked one of them, and the other one came over to defend his friend, and then the mountain lion started attacking him, so the other guy that was being attacked in the first place rode off and left his friend to be dragged off to a cave and eaten alive, basically.
That's horrible. I just can't imagine doing that. I mean, from working in law enforcement for so many years, anybody I worked with, the unspoken command was, we leave together, we don't leave. You don't leave your buddy behind, especially if they just came in and saved you. I kind of find that kind of pretty cowardly. I mean, I understand the guy was hurt, but I'm not going to leave anyone behind, no matter what it takes. We're going to face it together, and we're not going to walk away. But I hadn't actually heard about that encounter, but it's encounters like that are going to become more and more common as we encroach on animals' territories, and these are major predators. You were talking about elk becoming more scarce. Actually, here in Missouri, about 7 or 8 years ago, they reintroduced elk in southern Missouri, about an hour and a half from here, and the population has exploded. It's gotten to the point they're saying in the next few years they're probably going to allow limited hunts of elk in Missouri for the first time in 4 or 5 generations. But the elk population is really taking off. So they're large prey animals wandering around southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, because that herd got pretty big pretty quick.
And that's awesome how they are able to be reintroduced and be able to, get that populace going despite all the predators that are out there. It's awesome when you can reintroduce that, and then you guys have a nice hunting season. I've gone hunting as an observer, and I get excited about it, but once it comes to them shooting Bambi, I'm like, run, Bambi, run! Run for the hills! I do enjoy me some grouse. Like, grouse is basically wild chicken and is so good when you cook it just right. But Jason was saying, thinking that DA should try writing about Dogman to the song Every Breath You Take.
Yeah, that would certainly add a whole new element to that song. The song's actually pretty creepy if you listen to it as it is. But
right.
if it's from the point of view of a predator, yeah, it certainly adds a far more creepy edge to that tune.
Yeah, and they were also saying, I like Toll, like Jethro Tull, as far as also Led Zeppelin. There's so many different artists that you can listen to and just get inspired. And writing is amazing, and you get to paint those pictures in people's heads. And I really look up to what you're doing.
Thank you. It's something that I've always loved doing, and I hope I get to continue doing it for many years to come.
So what is the horror in real life that you've heard of as far as Bigfoot and Dogman? What are some of the encounters that you can share with us?
Well, specifically, one that really stood out was the one you'd mentioned, the siege at Lockett Ranch. I first heard this story 4 or 5 months ago, and it's been around. It supposedly happened in the 1950s. There was a family that lived outside of Taylor, Mississippi, that basically became targets. They had a huge tract of land out there, and when they started logging it, they ran afoul of a group of dogmen. And despite the fact that they fought for their land, they ended up getting ran off of it. And if you just go anywhere on Google and Google siege at Lockett Ranch to hear the whole story, but it's a pretty harrowing story. I mean, this happened to this family over a period of several years, and for them to lose the battle and end up giving up the land and leaving, that's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, and I've heard of a lot of different stories on farmland because a lot of people build on, in Pettigrew, Arkansas, I'm pretty sure my granny's house was built on an Indian burial ground. And I think there's a lot of those out there that people aren't aware of. It's beautiful land. It's so precious to them, but it's so precious to those that came before us. And it kind of disturbs those spirits. Have you heard anything about the Kentucky goblins?
No, I'm really not familiar with that. I would love to read more about it, but I've heard most of the sightings I've heard about from the Kentucky area is like the Beast of LBL, about the Dogman that killed a family back in the 70s in the Land Between the Lakes area. Apparently, the Dogmen that prowl the area known as LBL are violent, very violent. Been known to attack and drag off people in an area that's not known for large predators. It's very common for fishermen and deer hunters to set up camps in this area. But there's parts of LBL that the locals will tell people not to go to, that it's just too dangerous. And again, this is an area that's not known for large predators like bears. There hasn't been a brown bear sighting in Missouri in better part of 100 years. We are starting to see a few black bear around here, but black bear are largely herbivores. They'll eat berries and they might go after small game, but to hear of a black bear attacking a human is almost unheard of. Generally, they'll run off. Only way you can be pretty assured you're going to get attacked by a black bear is if you're messing with a cub. But brown bears, on the other hand, are far more aggressive. But they haven't been seen in this area in at least 100 years.
Yeah, we have a black bear out here. I'd hate to run into a grizzly because the black bear can be aggressive. We used to have one that would get into the dumpster up the road from where we lived in Tween Lakes, which was out in the forest in the middle of nowhere. And what do you expect, if an animal smells trash and, there's not a lot of elk or deer or rabbits or whatever they generally eat around, or berries or whatnot, because things just aren't growing like they should. Like, they're going to smell the trash and go for that. And, one time my husband went up with a sword and my nephew was like, what am I supposed to do? I don't have a weapon. And he's like, well, grab that rock right there. And he's like, F you, I'm not going. What, am I supposed to be the bait? But they can be aggressive if they're hungry, but that's with any carnivorous creature, even though they mainly eat off the berries and seeds and leaves of things. Once you hit that certain pattern of hungriness, like, humans look good too. I heard they taste like pork.
Most animals, especially predators, are opportunistic. If they can find an easy meal, they're going to take it, because when anything that relies on its abilities to forage for food, to hunt for food in the wild, it's all about reward versus effort. If it's going to be far more effort to get a kill than it's worth, they're not going to do it. That's why most animals, especially big predators, don't risk taking on something that can do them an injury, because a severe injury out in the wild is a death sentence. But they will go for an easy meal, and if they smell your trash, that's an easy meal.
Yeah, it smells good to them. Like, it may smell appalling to us, but they're just like, it's food. Let's get into that. Let's see what that tastes like. We actually had one get into the back of our truck, get into some excavator hydraulic oil, and slide down the front of the truck. So there's this excavator hydraulic oil slide down the front of the windshield and down the hood. Like, he had made his own slip and slide out of hydraulic fluid. And I felt sorry for him. I was like, man, I hope he's okay, because that stuff can be toxic. And I feel so bad for the things that people leave out and let them get into because they don't know any better. They're just looking for something to eat, and I don't know.
Something like
weird.
Something like that that's not native to where they're from, that's not something that they normally encounter. They smell something, they don't know what it is, they're going to come check it out. Just like dog, whenever you take your dog out for a walk, he's gonna be smelling around for other dogs or anything he hasn't smelled before. It's the unique smells that are going to attract him.
Yeah, they're like, what is that? He probably tasted it and rolled it in a little bit and decided, here, let's wipe this on his windshield. It was pretty interesting. I was like, what the heck? I actually had an experience going grouse hunting, and we had passed a bear cub on the way, and I was like, shouldn't we go back to the truck? And he's like, no, just keep moving because we don't want to run into Mama Bear. So we kept going and actually got a couple grouse that night and came back, and they had broken into the back window of the truck because there was like a donut left in there or something. They have such that powerful sense of smell. You could imagine what the Bigfoot or the Dogman has. What are their senses? And with that intelligence combined, like, it can be such a deadly combination.
Yeah, their senses, especially, judging by any canine, wolves in particular, they hunt by their sense of smell. And that sense of smell, they can follow a trail for miles. And something that's not even detectable by humans. So, they, from your natural body oils to your colognes and anything like that, they're going to smell that for a long ways and easily be able to track you by it.
Yeah, I was reading just this last week how they tag bears, and now they're having hunters carry tags so they can track where they're at and what they're doing, and when they get their kills or shoot something or whatnot. And it's showing that the bears have actually grown attracted to the sound of gunfire. When they hear the gunfire, they know there's a deer or something that has been shot, and the person's going to gut it on sight and then carry its carcass out. So they'll go and try to catch you with the carcass, but if not, they'll just feed on what's left over. So that's a pretty scary thought. They are intelligent. They are learning these things. Something was shot and killed. Let me go feed off of it, or what's left behind from it.
Well, I've had a couple of instances. I shot a deer one time, and it was a good solid shot. And I mean, you could see the bubbles in the blood on the ground, so I knew I got a lung. So I track it, and it was a couple hundred yards into the woods, and I found where it had fallen. And there was a considerable amount of blood, and the deer was absolutely gone. There was no more blood spots where it had gotten back up and wandered off. It laid down and bled out, and something carried it off. It was just gone.
Did you see any sort of like drag mark, or perhaps the bear was big enough to pick it up off the ground and you didn't see any track anymore?
No, I couldn't find any sign of it. I started moving in circles I branched out for a good 50 yards in each direction, walking in slow circles, and never even found another drop of blood.
Dell's saying in the chat room, you'd think if Bigfoot had a good sense of smell, they would bathe more often. But I think it's their sense of smell that kind of protects them. Like, certain animals know what that smell is, and humans are like, okay, I've never smelt that. That's not right. Let me get out of here. Like, it could be some sort of deterrent or protective shield for them. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say, just like any other large predator, the scent of that predator is enough to send lesser animals scurrying out of the way, and also like wild dogs, they develop oils in their fur, and if they get wet, they lose those oils and they'll freeze to death. So I would say, bathing in the wild probably wouldn't be that beneficial. And not only is that scent part of what they are, that scent identifies what they are. It also allows them to protect themselves in cold weather.
And Michael McNeil's saying it's how they attract their women. Maybe.
Bigfoot musk.
Yeah, right? It's a new cologne. Put it on. Watch the ladies gather.
Oh, day Sasquatch.
Yes. And my husband, he was just talking to the dog the other day, you need a bath. And I'm like, this is not the time of year to give the dog a bath, because like you're saying, those oils do protect it from, when it's in the rain or the snow or the slush or whatnot, it just kind of exudes that water. Like, the water only penetrates so far, and then it can't get any deeper, and it protects it from freezing and the harsh elements that are out there.
Exactly.
I do agree with bathing the dog, but just not this time of year.
Only if the dog's an indoor dog. If you're letting the dog out just long enough to go to the bathroom, then letting him back in, bathing him this time of year wouldn't hurt them. But if your dog spends any significant amount of time outside, you are getting rid of those oils and those natural water repellents.
Indeed. So have you seen, like, any concrete information or data that's been gathered on Bigfoot as far as footprints, hair, fur, pictures, videos, anything like that?
There's a lot of sightings in this area. Excuse me, had a belch there. But there's a considerable number of sightings in the area. If you Google Bigfoot sightings Missouri, you'll see, that within an hour's drive of where I live, there's literally dozens and dozens of sightings. But I don't know how to interpret what they call tree formations. I have seen things like that in the woods. Just wondered what they were. I figured it was somebody screwing around. But as I read more and more about the subject, these could very well be territorial markers. But I've seen them when I went out deer hunting, and you see those out in the deep woods. It really makes you wonder who would walk a mile and a half out into the woods just to make some sort of formation with trees. And it's obvious when you look at them that it's not a natural formation. Trees don't normally fall that way. So I think there is a certain amount to that. And I have seen structures like that out in the woods. And again, I think there's some sort of territorial marker. But those are just things that just don't normally occur. But as I read more about the subject, there's a lot of debate about what these tree formations actually mean. Some people think it's territorial markers. Some think it's like way markers on trails, and then others think it's where they built and used shelter in the past. But again, I don't know exactly what they mean. But I have seen those kind of structures and kind of left it wondering in my head what actually did it.
Yeah, you see like the teepee type things that they put together, or the tree that's bent over. You could only get it from a certain height and bend it over and put this log on it to make it arch like that, or different matting or bedding. It's interesting the different things that are out there, and it's not natural. It's got to be made by some sort of intelligent being. But some people just brush it off as maybe a deer laid there or something. But I think it's something greater than that.
I do too. I mean, because of some of these tree branches I've seen broken over. I'm 5'10", 250 pounds. I couldn't break it. I mean, I've tried breaking similar sized trees and I couldn't do it.
Justin was saying or asking, what's more dangerous, Sasquatch or Dogman?
From all the accounts I've read, I would say the Dogman is more dangerous. That's not to say that Sasquatch wouldn't be aggressive. I think Bigfoot would definitely be aggressive, especially if you're impinging on its territory, or again got too close to its mate or to an offspring. But the bulk of the Dogman encounters I read are dangerous. There's been accounts of it, them trying to force their way into people's homes. There's been accounts of people attacked and dragged off. The Dogman seems to be far more aggressive, and one of the most common factors of all the Dogman encounters that I've read, and people that I've spoken to, one commonality of that is people that have seen them have mentioned one particular detail about looking into their eyes, just having this absolute feeling of evil. And that's something you don't get in a common description with Bigfoot. Most people, people talk about how, they saw it and it freaked them out, it scared them, or so they felt in some encounters they said they felt like they weren't threatened, they were just being watched. But the Dogman encounters, almost universally, people mention about how evil the eyes looked.
Yeah, and I've heard my siblings actually told a story about at our granny's farmhouse, and I saw, a friend of mine called them the Kentucky Goblin when I shared my story with her. But then when I did more research online, these are things, well, she called it the Cobalt, I'm sorry. And they actually wear clothes and hats and stuff. Well, these things didn't. They reminded me of gremlins, not the furry, cute one, Mogwai, but the scaly, bigger-eared, freaky-looking ones. And, so there's these different stories. I think I saw the Kentucky Goblin as far as my research online, but it's hard to tell what you're really looking at because not everybody reports these things, especially on farmland. You have this certain perspective of yourself or whatnot that you need to upkeep for people to buy your things and not think you're crazy in the head or whatnot. And it's so sad how that judgment and ridicule can really affect people's lives and their livelihood, so to speak.
That's why so many people don't come forward with their encounters, is fear of ridicule or fear of reprisal. I believe there's a lot more encounters than are ever reported. And I've read a lot of encounters that you just, when you're reading it, you're like, this doesn't really add up. I'm sure that there are a lot of encounters out there that have been just completely made up. But then there's some of them that you read the level of detail, you read the setting, the description, and it just rings true. And even out of the thousands upon thousands of Bigfoot Dogman sightings that are out there, if only 1% were true, that still means it's out there.
Yeah, and then I remember where I was going with my point. My siblings had seen red glowing eyes, and they were kind of like cat-shaped eyes through their window. And of course, they're thinking demon or whatnot, but a lot of times when people report sightings of Sasquatch or Dogman, they see the red glowing eyes from the reflection of the light coming through your window as they're looking in. Have you heard any perspective from people as far as what they generally see, what makes them look and see that there's something out there and then they realize it is Bigfoot or Dogman? Do they get that red reflective eye thing?
I've heard a lot of reds, greens, and yellows. And I think it would probably, a lot of it would depend on the angle at which you're seeing the eyes, if they're looking straight at you or looking off to the side, because animals have eye shine, and for whatever reason humans don't. And you can spotlight anything, with a bright flashlight. You can light up a raccoon and its eyes are going to glow. And animals' eyes do glow. It's just the way things are. And seeing something, if your bedroom windows 8 to 10 feet off the ground and you see eyes reflected looking in, odds are really good it's not a possum, because there's no unless there's an 8-foot possum wandering around out there. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. But the description of being like cat eyes, was that because they had cat-like pupils, or they were just like it
was like the shape of the eyes. Shape. Yeah,
that very well could have been because it might have been squinting or peering inside. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Dogman. Dogman and Bigfoot, a lot of those stories that you hear, they're attracted to the sounds of children. And a lot of encounters, they when they hear children in the woods, they'll come investigate. I think Dogmen do so out of a source of an easy meal, to be honest. But Bigfoot are probably fascinated because, being a large primate, I would say our children playing sounds a lot like their children playing.
Indeed. And, you have males, you have females, and I could see the female being drawn to the sound of a child as far as the Sasquatch goes. And like you were saying with the Dogman, it's like easy prey. It's like music to their ears. Dinner's ready.
Exactly.
So yeah, we've even had that out here at Mesa Verde one year. We had a mountain lion run up and snag a kid by its head and try to drag it off. Luckily, the parent ran after it, running and screaming and waving its arms, and so it eventually dropped the child. But they're easy prey, an easy meal, and it's like music to their ears. Like, dinner's ready is the dinner bell. And what a scary thought.
When you've got a child that weighs 30 to 40 pounds and a mountain lion weighs upwards of 150 pounds, it's no contest. It's going to bear that child down easy, and it's going to carry him off. I mean, these are animals that routinely kill deer and drag them up into trees to eat them. You can go out into the deep woods, and if you're paying attention, you can see from time to time, you can see elements, remnants of deer carcasses that are still up in trees. I mean, that's just predator behavior for them. And because they want to drag it somewhere where they can eat without other, like wolves or anything, trying to steal the kill. So if they can drag a full-grown deer up into a tree, they're not going to have any trouble dragging a child. And a bigger predator, like a Dogman, a 40-pound child is going to be nothing. I mean, we like the David Paulides Missing 411, if you're familiar with those. I love those books, not just because Paulides as a former cop, I love to read stuff that written by cops, but because he's so well put together the pieces, he's painting a very disturbing picture. We've got literally thousands upon thousands of people that have gone missing on trails and in state parks, state and federal parks all across the country, without a trace. Sometimes they might find clothing, sometimes they might find remains, but sometimes they find absolutely nothing. I can understand, a predator carrying off a 40 or 50 pound kid, but it's got to be something pretty big to drag off a 220, 230 pound grown man who had a deer rifle. This is not something that just happens. And apparently a lot of hunters do go missing. And Paulides talks about how there are clusters of these disappearances. And if you Google the missing 411, he really paints a vivid picture. I mean, it's his evidence is, he never really actually says what he thinks is making people disappear. But as you read more in those books, it's got to be something big. It's not something. A pack of wolves is not going to drag a guy out of a deer stand. They're going to wait for him to come down. But if I'm sitting in a deer stand, I've got a pack of wolves at the bottom, I'm going to drop a couple of them, and they're probably going to take off. Wolves are not stupid. Wolves are very intelligent, and they're pack hunters. You kill a couple of them, they're going to realize, hey, this one's fighting back. It's not worth the effort. And that's where you get that. You fall back on that effort versus reward. In predators, if the prey is going to be too costly to take down, they will go to easier prey. So I would say there's some cases exactly the least amount of energy for the most amount of reward. That's why the wolves will go after the last one in the trail of the buffalo, or they'll go after the weak and the sick first because they're the easiest to kill. And the same thing would be with any large predator. It's not going to go after something it feels can fight back. But there's just way too many disappearances out in these parks and recreational areas to just say, oh, well, they just all wandered off and got lost. And again, a lot of them were armed, so that would rule out your small to mid-range predators. Whatever's making all these people disappear, it's intelligent, it's big, and it's not afraid of us.
Indeed. And, I came out of the paranormal closet because Dylan Redwine went missing, and his father actually put his remains up on Middle Mountain. And so I've gone up there several times with my dowsing rods. I was pregnant at the time, so I was in a vehicle and trying to ping off the same spots as I went up each time. And I went up and down about 4 times, and I pinged on the same spot every time. But there's no way that I'm going up in the mountains, especially after I saw a bear see me and then run off as I'm in my truck. If I were on foot, it might have, tried to follow me and eat me or whatnot, but I'm not going up into the forest alone because there are so many unknown things that are out there, or known things that are larger than you realize, that can easily overpower you and drag you off and eat you, like these healthy and athletic mountain bikers. Like, I'm not even that athletic, and they can drag one off up into its cave and eat it until, all you find is the bones of his remains. It's pretty scary and freaky. And then there's the other stuff that we don't even realize is out there. Like, some of us do know about Sasquatch, Dogman. Mating season is generally around this time. Dogman generally doesn't care. He's just hungry and looking for a bite to eat. But there's so many different variables out there that I find it reasonable to not go in the forest or anywhere alone. Always take a friend. Always let people know where you're going. So if you do go missing, they can find you.
Exactly. And, tell somebody where you're going. Always leave an indication on where you're going. And for God's sakes, don't go unarmed. I know you're with a lot of people don't really believe in carrying weapons, but carry a walking stick if nothing else. If it's a mountain lion, if you've got a 6-foot piece of oak on you, you can at least keep it back, or strike it enough times it doesn't want to attack you. But don't ever go completely unarmed. Tool use and weapon use is what sets us apart. We need to be smarter when we're doing things like this. And if you're going to go hiking in a national park, stop by the ranger station, and it's just a matter of a few minutes of filing a plan with them on where you're hiking and where you're camping, and they'll know where to start looking. And it's just using common sense and like you said, not going alone. Being a cop, I don't go anywhere unarmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people look at you like you're crazy, like, you got a gun? What is that for? Well, that's for my protection. Well, you're paranoid. No, I'm cautious and I'm prepared. Like, you never know what's going to happen out there.
Exactly.
You could run across a crazy hungry animal, or you can run across a crazy person. But we were talking about the Dogman, and, you know, I'm thinking about to my veterinarian days where people would bring in their litters of dogs, and you cut off and then basically solder the dew claw. Like, if these wild packs of animals are born with dew claws, they could easily climb a tree. You know, I wouldn't put it past the Dogman to be able to climb a tree and get you, or wolves even.
Well, in the account of what they call the Beast of LBL, which was a famous Dogman attack, it talked about a family that was killed in one of the campgrounds in the land between the lakes in Kentucky. And one of the bodies they found of a little girl had been dragged 30 feet up a tree and had been partially eaten. That's a great account if you guys haven't heard it before. There's a dozen different encounters, a dozen of different versions of the story. Well, they tell the same story, but they're different podcasts and different shows have done specifically on the Beast of LBL. Just go to YouTube and put in the Beast of LBL, and you'll find any number of podcasts that want to tell the story, and it's a pretty creepy story, and it's something to bear in mind.
Indeed, and I actually wrote a side note here, Beast of LBL, because I have not heard of that, and that's why I love hearing different people's stories and their different perspectives, because I love to expand my mind and my knowledge of things, because there's so much out there, like I was saying before, that you don't even know exists. You know, they're even finding new creatures like deer with gills and different crazy stuff like that. Like, you know, we don't even know all the creatures on land. How can we know all the creatures in sea and water?
Exactly.
It's insane, all the possibilities. And I always say anything's possible because it's true. You know, there's so much out there, and fact is stranger than fiction. And that's why I don't close my mind off to it. It's possible. It could be there. It could happen. It could be happening to these people that are reporting it. Not all of these people are crazy. There are a few that are reasonably crazy, but for the most part, it's just average, everyday Joes or Susans or whatever that are reporting these things and being ridiculed and torn down for it.
Well, when you look into the history behind Bigfoot sightings and when you look into the Dogman legends, pretty much every tribe of Native Americans in North America has their own version of that same story. They talk about creatures. They describe the creatures very similarly, similar behaviors, making similar noises. These are not something that just appeared when Patterson Gimlin shot that footage back in the 60s. This is something that's been talked about since before white men was even on the North American continent. In fact, if you read the accounts of Vinland of Leif Erikson, when they founded the first Viking settlement here, they talked about the Skraelings running them that were killing them and forced them away. And these are Vikings. These are Vikings that were known to be big, powerful warriors. And the descriptions that they had, they described them as large and covered in hair. Now, for somebody the size of a Viking in those days to refer to somebody as large, it's got to be a fairly big person. It sounds to me like if you read the account, although they didn't have the word Bigfoot, if you read the account of Vinland and the abandonment of the Viking settlement here, it sounds to me like they were driven out by Bigfoot.
So it was Bigfoot and not Dogman or the dire wolf.
Well, they talked about them being people, and I don't think they would have considered a Dogman to even remotely resemble a person. And multiple accounts of hunters seeing Bigfoot and scopes and things like that. One of the reasons they say they haven't pulled the trigger is because it looked so human. And I think the Viking account was talking about them running afoul of a tribe of Bigfoot.
I also heard an account from an older gentleman that had farmland, and there were these furry creatures that were encroaching on their chickens and such. And they finally, they went out one night, and of course they're drinking and using their spotting lights, and they finally come across these two individuals that they think are bears, and they shoot one, and then they come down and see that it's not a bear, but it's like a hominid. It's humanish, and the guy really felt guilty, and in his fear, he buried the thing and, said a prayer, and still to this day feels guilty about taking its life because he did think it was a bear, but it was actually a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. It was a hominid of some sort, and so he felt like he had taken a human life. And he's at the end of his days, so he's just barely putting that information out as to where it is. If this certain person will go out and find it, he's willing to give that information. And if we could just get those bones and be able to test that marrow and actually get this DNA strand or whatever it is from this Bigfoot to where we can test it against hairs and other things that are found. And I know there's been tests done that show it's not a dog, it's not a bear, it's not a cow or a deer or whatever. It's something of a hominid species. It's so interesting to think that that species can still be around. And some people think of it as interdimensional or something like that, but I think it's just good at what it does. It's good at cloaking itself in the trees or behind rocks or whatnot, and it's quick. When you're trying to take a picture, like I've been trying to get this picture of this skunk for like 3 weeks now, and I finally got a good one because it was trying to burrow under these logs or pieces of wood from this building that they're trying to build. And I got the picture. No, not TNA strand, tripping. I said DNA strand. But yeah, I got a picture of him, and then I let him be because I was afraid he was going to go under these boards and get stuck, and I didn't want to harm his life. I just wanted to see, I am actually seeing this creature, and I was saying to people, if I can't get a picture of a skunk or a raccoon or a fox, what are the chances of getting a picture of a skinwalker or a Bigfoot? But on that note, DA, we got to go on our second break. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rocking. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot THAL. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother Is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother Is Watching.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel, the freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social media freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and listen closely. Spaced Out Radio continues through the weekend. From the mile-high mountains of Colorado to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Weekend with Tessa N Thomas.
I love these new commercial breaks that Dave has given me. It really gives me a pump. But yeah, I'm sitting here talking to author D.A. Roberts, and we're discussing Bigfoot and Dogman. D.A., welcome back. It's so great to have you on the show tonight.
I'm having a blast. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I'm so grateful that you're here and we're discussing this topic. I know I generally cover more paranormal things, but I've been trying to reach out to people in the Bigfoot realm and such, and everybody's busy this time of year. Perhaps in November and December they won't be because of the snow cover and such. according to them. But yes, I'm so grateful that you're here and that we're encroaching on these new realms for me.
I think, personally, I think November and December would be a great time to go out looking for Bigfoot, because if there's snow on the ground, tracks are going to be easy to find. Not only that, if there's a lot of white snow on the ground, a dark brown creature is going to stand out pretty well, and you're going to be 100% guaranteed it's not a bear because they're going to be hibernating.
Exactly, and I was just thinking that when I was saying that, like, they take this time off, but wouldn't you find better tracks in the snow? In Rico, the one that they were talking about was albino. And some people say, you know, as far as the Yeti and stuff like that, it's a relative of the Bigfoot, and they're white because of where they live. Rico is a snowy place, but not all year round. It's just during the winter. And it may last a little longer than down here in the valleys, but I think there's albino creatures of all types. There's snakes and gerbils and hamsters and even children, you know, humans are albino. It's just a genetic mutation, basically.
Yeah. It crops up across pretty much every species.
Ronald said I said the S word, and I did not. I did not say the S word. Rono, you're full of it. But yeah, on break we were talking about Bigfoot and spirit animals and how people are talking about the blurriness of pictures that they get. It's just a matter of being on your game and getting those pictures. Like I said before, I've been working on this site doing graveyard security. I've come across the skunk for the most part, the raccoon, second of all, and then the fox. The fox I got a picture of, and it was blurry because it was moving so quickly. And the skunk and the raccoon are quick moving too, but I actually got a clear picture of the skunk because it was trying to burrow under some 2x4s. Otherwise, it's like by the time you get to your camera mode to get these pictures of this entity that everybody knows exists, it's too late. So how are you supposed to take a picture of a Bigfoot? And are these blurry pictures of Bigfoot actually ghosts, or are they just, you know, creatures in movement that look like you can see through them?
I would guess that they're just, you know, people being nervous, and you know, I can't imagine you would be comfortable standing, you know, 40, 50 feet away from a Sasquatch and trying to take its picture. You know, your adrenaline's going to dump, your hands are going to shake, and this is a very, very large animal that we don't know if it intends to come up and introduce itself or drag you off and make a dinner out of you. It's that primitive fear, and I don't think, me personally, I can't speak for everybody, but if I was walking through the woods and I looked and there was a Bigfoot stepping out from behind a tree, my cell phone's not the first thing I'm going for. I'm probably going to be grabbing my pistol.
And Rano said, S word, against snow. I said snow. So that was the S word he was referring to. Thank goodness, because I am a Marine, and even as a child, I had a sailor's mouth. And that was my biggest fear doing this show. If I say these certain cuss words, I'm fired. And so that was a big point of stress for me, but I've actually done very well. I haven't cussed on my own show yet. I've cussed on other people's show unintentionally. But so far, so good here.
I've done my best to watch my language. Being ex-Army and you know, more than a decade in law enforcement, my language tends to get salty. So I've been trying to be on my best behavior.
Right. High five, DA. We did it.
No, it's been no F-bombs so far.
Indeed. We're doing quite well. I do like to add to the swear jar because I love the savings, but at the same time, I love my show and I would love to keep it and, you know, hang out with my friends from, I like to call it SOR Asylum, because we all share our innermost secrets and all the crazy things that have happened to us, and we do sound crazy to the outside world, so I refer to it as SOR Asylum, but I love us, and I love my paranormal family, and I love to keep them close. But like you were saying, like, that adrenaline gets pumping, and with the first time I took the picture of the skunk, you know, he was only 6 foot away from the back of my foot, and I turned around slowly because I thought somebody was about to attack me. Generally, I'd turn around and whack him in the head, but I just felt like I needed to turn around slowly and look at this thing. and it was not a human trying to attack me, it was a skunk, and you're shaking because of the adrenaline, like, I can't believe this thing didn't just spray me in the face, and I take a picture of it, and it's just a blur, like, you can't even tell, except for I knew where it was. If anybody else looked at this picture, they're like, what are you talking about? All I see is dirt and buildings and such. But yeah, you get that adrenaline pumping, even if you do get your camera or your cell phone camera out in time, you have that heartbeat, that shaking going on in your body, and that uncontrolled nervousness or intuitive feeling of, your primal instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I'm not a great photographer to begin with. If I've got two people standing still for a picture, I'd say 60% of the time that's still going to come out blurry because I'm a terrible photographer. My brother, on the hand, is a brilliant photographer. He does a lot of landscape photography, so I'm sure he would be able to capture the image pretty easily, but not me. I'm definitely not a shutterbug.
I actually started off doing video photography with my dad at the age of 13, and then I expanded doing regular photography. And, I take pictures of the sky all the time and nature and everything, but still, there's just no way to prepare yourself. Even as in death, when a certain person is supposed to pass away, you try to prepare yourself, but there's no way that you can ever prepare yourself. There's just no way you know how you're going to react in that moment.
Exactly. It's just, it's just like in the military or in law enforcement. You try to train for the worst case scenario, but until you're actually in it, you don't know how you're going to react. You hope you react as your training would have you prepared for, but in the heat of the moment when the adrenaline dumps, it's a whole different animal. It's one thing to stand on a gun line and put rounds to a paper target. It's another thing entirely when it's a real target and they're putting rounds right back at you. So it's just a matter of when the rubber meets the road. If you can stay calm and keep your hands from shaking. Was it Wyatt Earp said, "Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can sling one off and shoot it. It's not going to be accurate. If you could just breathe and take your time and, do it to the best of your ability, you're most likely to win that round.
Precisely.
So I want to, we're in our last hour, and if you guys want to call in with any questions or comments or any of your cryptid adventures or things that have happened to you, give us a call at 1-970-335-9596. That's 1-970-335-9596, and call in with your experiences and questions. And also, DA, I wanted to hit on your books. What books have you written?
I've got a series called the Ragnarok Rising Saga, which is a zombie post-apocalyptic series. They're in the process of being reissued by J. Ellington Ashton Press, so they should be hitting the shelves again. I've got the Infinite Black series, which the first two books in that series are about a group of individuals called the Lost Legion. And the first one's called Lost Legion Perdition's Flames. The second one is Lost Legion Blood and Honor, but they're all in the Infinite Black series. I'm working on the third book in that series, which is going to be about a group of smugglers. I don't really have a working title for it yet. It's still in pretty early stages. I'm also in the middle of another horror series that I've tentatively called Apex Predator. And it's going to be about a werewolf, which, considering the amount of research I've been doing lately, I may evolve that more toward a Dogman type creature because it really makes more sense for the story.
Well, that's awesome. And do you have more after that, as far as like Bigfoot and Dogman or whatnot?
I've got stacks and stacks and stacks of ideas for stories. One of the authors that works for the publisher I work for, her name is Kat Dahman. Kat is an amazing author. Her and I co-wrote a book together, which should be out in the next couple of months. It's going to be called Cold Hunger, and it's concerning the Wendigo legend. And she's a fantastic writer, and I can't wait to see this book in print. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and it's finally ready, and I'm pretty happy with where it went. So you'll be looking for that one from J. Ellington Ashton as well.
That's awesome. And we actually had a guest on here last week. He had to leave early because his wife thought that her water broke, so he had to go home and get her because he doesn't like to talk about such things in his house. He doesn't want to attract that energy. So he had to go get her and take her to the hospital. Turns out it was false labor. But he started to talk about the Wendigo, and somebody said that he was actually wrong on his description. Can you explain to us what exactly the Wendigo is?
So there's different legends. There's different versions of the Wendigo legend. The Algonquin tribes, they described it as having like a skeletal face, almost like a deer skull, with horns and taloned hands. And then other versions of the Wendigo legend, they described it as being very much like a Bigfoot type creature. One commonality that all the descriptions have is they talk about its hunger for human flesh, and the legends talk about how during a particularly harsh winter, one native warrior turned to cannibalism to survive and was cursed with the curse of the Wendigo. And I think that in and of itself, the stigma, the horror of cannibalism is bad enough. But when you add the monstrous visage of the Wendigo, even if all you saw was, something that looked very much like a Dogman, just knowing that it's there to eat you is more than enough to make your blood run cold. And it very well could be just an attempt to explain creatures that were preying on them in the dead of winter that would carry off villagers or carry off children, or the curse of the Wendigo could be quite literal. It could be that a person resorted to cannibalism and evolved into this monstrous creature that eats human flesh. It's a terrifying legend, and it's one of those things that I love reading about. And the Wendigo, if you look at it, it talks about it as a person that became this creature. That blends in very well with the Skinwalker legend. It was a conscious decision, an evil act that allowed them to become a Skinwalker. So you can see elements of these legends crop up across multiple tribes. The Navajo with the Skinwalker, but versions of the Skinwalker exist in a lot of different Western tribes. And the Wendigo, versions of the Wendigo appear in a lot of the North and the Northwestern tribes. It's just those legends have so much similarity among the different tribes that you think there's got to be something to them.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the Navajo or D.A, as they like to be called, because when supposedly, according to some people, when they first came out, it was just a tribal man wearing the skin of a creature like, a wolf or, like you said, a deer or deer carcass or whatnot, and kind of taking that shape to hunt for other animals. But then it, progressed and turned into a certain sort of dark magic that most people that practice it have intentionally taken lives of family members or other people that they know. When it comes to modern day, this certain individual is telling me that it does reach farther out east than I was aware of. I thought it was mostly in the Four Corners area where I live and Navajo based, but it could be from other cultures that progressed from the eastern area into the west, and that's why they have the same sort of magic. And when you were talking about the Wendigo, and I'm picturing this deer sort of skeleton on the top with the horns and everything, going on down to the bottom portion looking different, like it just appears to me like it's a person or tribal member dressing in this certain skin to do a hunt, but it could also be the whole Skinwalker, aka dark magic.
Very much so. And the D.A, that's where the word Skinwalker comes from. And other tribes have different names for it. I would have to do some more research to come up with some of the names. But that same type of creature exists in multiple tribes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you were saying, And I agree, most of them are dark, and the ones that I have witnessed myself did not give off a good energy, but there are stories out there of, two coyote or wolf creatures running along a car at an accelerated amount of speed and weaving in and out of traffic. Eventually, the police caught up to them and cornered them in this, basically a crevasse in a valley where they couldn't get out, and when they came upon them, it was a man and a woman with paint on their face, and they didn't harm or hurt anyone. They were just like enjoying the spirit of the animal and partaking in what its life would be, and they couldn't really do anything legally to them because they were just practicing their religion. Perhaps they were, children that while they were born, they accidentally took the life of their mother, so they were able to partake in this certain magic, and they don't have the same dark intention as others. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the legends I read of the skinwalker said that in the early days that they were actually shamans that were doing it for the benefit of the tribe to bring in hunted animals and things like that. But as the years progressed, it became more and more dark magic. It became more taboo. And now, if you know anybody that's First Nations ancestry, especially if they've grew up on a reservation, they don't even like to talk about skinwalkers because it's something that they consider very dark, very very evil magic, and that even speaking about it can bring them down on you.
Mm-hmm. I've also heard that when their loved ones pass, they don't mention the name because they want that spirit to rest in peace, and they kind of feel this weirdness about saying their name as far as they might be waking the spirit or putting it at unrest. There's a lot of different beliefs that they have that are very cool and interesting, but at the same time, like me talking about my losses and my lost loved ones, as far as my mom and my dad and so many close people in my life that I've lost, it makes me feel closer to them, and I want to keep their memory alive because nobody wants to be forgotten, and everybody has a message that they're trying to get across. So I kind of don't agree with that, but at the same time, I wonder if there's any weight behind it.
Well, anything that has enough belief behind it certainly has a degree of weight to it, like the creatures they call tulpas, that are essentially constructs from belief. I think if you get enough people believing in something, that you can't really dismiss that. If you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that believe something, it's true to them, and you can't dismiss that. I mean, if it's true to somebody on that spiritual level, there's got to be something to it, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. I mean, my religious beliefs are my own, and I don't really share those with a lot of people. But it doesn't mean I dismiss anyone else's religious beliefs because I don't believe the way they do. That's a deeply personal thing, and if that's something you believe, then it should never be discredited.
I agree completely, and the Dalai Lama even says, and I know everybody listening is probably tired of hearing me say this, but it is a very wonderful and valid point. Don't put down other religions because everybody has a different sickness and different medicines work for different people. Religion is medicine for people, and so that's helping a certain individual. So I've had best friends that were Lutheran, and the worst argument I ever got into was with my best friend Jamie, and she is a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm only like 13 or 14 at the time, and I'm like, let's just agree to disagree and not discuss this anymore because it was building so much like anger and resentment between each other because we didn't agree, and it's better that we didn't talk about it and we just enjoyed our own things and took our own medicine and left that out of the subject.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it as medicine. And then a lot of Native Americans referred to anything that was spiritual in nature, especially shamanic magic, as being medicine, and it's something that soothes soothes that inner portion, that soothes the inner beast, so to speak. It's the salve for the brain. It speaks to your soul on a primitive level that is a fundamental truth for you. And everybody's journey in life is different. And so, there's no one cookie cutter path for that. Everybody's unique, so everybody's interpretation, everybody's path is going to be as unique as they are.
It's so true, and we're all here for a different reason, and we do have our own paths and different messages to share. And, as a child, I went to different churches, and then when I went into the military, like, every religion was at my fingertips. Like, every Sunday I was going to a different religion and hearing different variations and taking different messages, things that felt right to me in my soul or my gut, I would take into my life. Other things I would just, reject and let go on to someone else. And, I still have an issue. I was baptized at 8 years old into the LDS church, so I did a lot of LDS as a kid until I was about 15. And then, like I said, I went into the military, and I went to the Catholic Church. I went to so many different churches, and I think everybody has a bit of truth, but nobody, no matter how much they preach it, has the solid knowledge of who we are, what we're meant to be, and, what our path is. We're just meant to find that on our own, find the happiness within us, and learn to love ourselves and be happy with ourselves, and not find somebody to complete us, but find somebody to complement us.
Yeah. And when you've met that person that compliments you like that, that's a unique connection, and I think that's missing in a lot of people in the world anymore. Is we spend too much time on social media and not enough really socializing, making those fundamental connections. And I think if more people connected like that, there would be less problems in the world.
I agree, and it is sad because not a lot of people look up anymore, and that's prime prey for a predator to come and attack you. It's best to walk and look at where you're going, look at your surroundings, be aware of that, because people are afraid of being identified if they do attack you. And people aren't having that human connection. They feel like they are more so than any time in the history of man, but it's so much different than having that personal inner human relationship, the looking into each other's eyes and speaking and hearing each other's voices. And I don't know how many times my messages have been taken so far off of what I really meant, because you can't see my face and what my emotions are portraying. You're just reading my words and taking it the total wrong way.
Exactly. You when you're reading only text, you lose a lot of context. You lose body language. You lose being able to interpret somebody's facial expressions, whether or not they're smiling when they said it or if they looked angry. You in text only, you lose a lot of that fundamental level of communication.
Yeah, and I do have a sick sense of humor, so I can see how somebody could take me wrong. But
I'm extremely sarcastic, so that doesn't always show through well in writing.
Right, me too. So, I try to put a smiley face or an upside down smiley face or whatever. Like, I'm being goofy here. I'm not being serious. And Rano's saying, overtime? No, we're only at 27 minutes after. I don't know. I am often tempted to take overtime because I know Dave does it. And he doesn't do it very often. But I wonder if I could ever get away with it. But I know that Tripp will be in there saying, it's time to go to commercial, or it's time to end the show. In bold case letters, and I feel guilty if I try to go on. But I was also reading, you were talking about types of creatures, hostile versus peaceful. What can you tell us about that?
Well, you read a lot of these encounters. You'll read the occasional encounter about how somebody was lost and a Bigfoot guided them back out of the woods. And that's not everybody's experience, but you do hear about encounters that are peaceful and easy. Now, granted, you don't read that so much with Dogman encounters. You pretty much read about people getting scared out of an area, or they're trying to get into a house, or people vanishing. But there are peaceful encounters with Bigfoot, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a predator. That doesn't necessarily mean that if they felt threatened, they wouldn't defend themselves. That just means that there was no reason to be violent in that particular situation. I mean, there are lots of peaceful encounters that people have with grizzly bears. That doesn't mean it won't maul you if it gets the chance. If people understood that these are animals, these are dangerous animals, and approach them with respect, and approach the whole situation with respect, I think there would be a better opportunity for people to enjoy the experience. If your first reaction is violent, I think the encounter is going to turn violent pretty fast. I'm a very defensive type person, but that doesn't mean I'm going to shoot first and ask questions later. It means I'm going to move to protect my family, and that'll be my first primary concern. But if it's not aggressive, I'm not going to be. Same thing. Any encounter in law enforcement, you can be defensive without being aggressive. You just position yourself. You and your partner L out so that you're not presenting a unified target. You can be defensive without being overly aggressive, and it's a fine line that people have to walk and learn to walk. But the encounter will be based largely on your reaction and your perception of that. Your perception of that encounter. These creatures are definitely intelligent. Even the Dogman, it's obvious that there is an intelligence there. And in the case of the Dogman, I think it's a malevolent intelligence, if I'm using the correct terminology. Mm-hmm. I think it's definitely an intelligent predator, and it does not see us as anything but prey. Whereas Bigfoot might just see us as another tribe. That doesn't mean it won't knock one of us off if it has a need to or the opportunity to. Dogmen, that they're just another animal, another element entirely. They're predators. They're primarily predators. You can tell from the description of the pronounced canines. This is an animal that is a predator. It is primarily a meat eater. Bigfoot has teeth more like humans. I have heard descriptions of large canines, but by and large the teeth are very human-like, just bigger. That means they're more of an omnivorous diet. They'll eat berries. They'll eat. That's not to say they won't eat meat, but they'll eat other things that they can find to put in their habitat. And I think that personally, I'm no expert. I think that Bigfoot may prove to be a relic population of Neanderthal. I don't think it's so much. I think it's a primate insofar as human beings are primates. We're all in the primate family tree, but I think they're more hominid than gorilla. Mm-hmm. I think they're on the hominid side of things. That's why I lean toward them being a relic population of Neanderthal, because it's proven they're tool users and they're definitely intelligent. And if they're smart enough to live and avoid us, that means they know we're a threat. And it doesn't take a big leap of the imagination to realize that if you're a threat, they're going to avoid you. And that's just another layer on why it's so hard to get a picture of one. Because if you bring a camera up to your face to take a picture, that's not that widely differing image of you bringing a pistol up to take a shot. They might see that as an aggressive action and immediately move. Or they're afraid they're going to get more than just a picture taken. So easy to see why you can't get a clear picture. Because if I thought you were going to take a shot at me, I'd be moving too. It's basic dog psychology. If you ever walk down a gravel road and a dog come running at you, you don't have to have a rock in your hand to scare that dog. You can rear your hand back like you're going to throw a rock, and you can see it on the dog's face. It's like, oh God, he's got a rock, and they'll back off.
Right.
And that's learned behavior. They've been hit with rocks before, and they know what that motion is. You're getting ready to throw something, and they get out of the way. So dogs are intelligent, and it's proven that dogs can understand certain words. And I see it with my own dogs all the time. I look at my dog and say, "Do you want to go to Chicago?" And he'll just look at me. But if I say the word outside, he's up like a shot and heading for the door. But it's learned behavior, and if you're a creature with a high intelligence level like a Bigfoot, and you're avoiding people who make gestures that might be something that's going to cause you harm. Again, it's not a hugely differing motion to bring a pistol up as it would be to bring a camera up.
And if a dog's on a chain or whatever, they're going to be that much more aggressive and defensive of their area, because this is their certain area they're supposed to protect, and if you get in this range, you're basically dead. But I agree with you as far as Bigfoot goes. I think it's more of a hominid thing, like a prehistoric ancestor that still exists, and there are creatures out there that people don't realize are there. There are sightings. There, even in Mayan temples and such, they're drawing things that they have witnessed, and there are stegosaurus on the temples. There are different dinosaurs that they would not have known had existed except for they had seen them. So there's certain things that have existed in times when scientists who don't know any better, like they can't even really test the bones because of the radiation and the degradation in it. All they can test is what is underneath the bone. So they test what's underneath the bone and try to say this is when this animal was around. But I do believe that hominids, as far as Sasquatch and Bigfoot, I think they are a relative of ours that are still here and don't coexist with us because we are so different. And why would they subject themselves to us? Because we are hunters, and we are basically things that, basically a virus. We just eat up what's around us. We eat up the land, we eat up the food, we eat up everything. We're basically a parasite. And they try to, be on lower levels as far as numbers and try to preserve their land, and they know what they can eat and what they shouldn't eat, and they don't overdo the whole food thing. They do it preservingly. But as far as Dogman, have you heard people saying that this is actually a government experiment gone wrong?
I've read that, but I don't think we had the ability to make any kind of huge genetic experimentation as far back as some of these stories go. Some of the Dogman encounters go back to the 1800s, and I don't think we had any kind of genetic technology back in those days.
Well, I mean, that being said, you look at the Egyptians, and there's bird-headed people and dog-headed people. There's all kinds of different genetic weirdness going on. There's lights in the temples. There's batteries back in that day. I think there are certain knowledges that have been here and then died off because of the perversion of man and different steps that we have taken that is destroying and consuming our earth. And so they just kind of kill us off, kill us off, kill us off. We're in, basically, from what I understand, the last days. We're the last ones left, and this is the end. Once we're done with our realm, there's supposed to be nothing else after us. But how many times has that been said? I mean, since the beginning of time, people have been talking about the end of time and kids these days. So, I mean, what can we really take seriously?
I think if it got to the point where our technology and our ability to kill ourselves far outstriped our reasoning not to, I think the only thing we can do really is destroy this planet's ability to sustain us. I don't think we can kill life on this planet. I think we can kill ourselves off, and we'll probably take a lot of species with us. But it might be 100,000 years down the road. It might be 1,000,000 years down the road. But eventually the Earth is going to shrug, and it's going to start over. The only thing we can really do is destroy ourselves.
Certain people are saying that global warming, etc., is a myth. Other people are saying it's a reality. At a certain time, they were saying we have this time frame to change what we're doing, but we've actually surpassed that. So really, there's no turning back at this point, basically, from what scientists and everybody are saying. And people are saying, well, that's just libertarian or libtard stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I've seen the glaciers melting off. I've seen species dying off, even coral reefs because of the UV light and the warming of the sea and all this other stuff. They cannot live. But, I mean, how many times has that happened? Is this really the end of the world, or is it just the end of the world as we know it?
I would say it's the end of the world as we know it. Like the dinosaurs, we had our shot, and if we screw it up, the Earth will replace us with something else and give that a shot. It might be insects next time. I mean, it didn't work out so good for the reptiles, and now the mammals are kind of screwing it up. Maybe they'll let the insects try next time. Maybe a million years from now, we'll have, sentient mantises walking around. I don't know. We certainly have no way of predicting that. But again, I think our ability to destroy is pretty much going to be the ability of our ability to destroy this planet's capacity for sustaining us. At some point, the Earth will shrug and start over. I don't think we can, unless we develop a bomb that can crack the planet in half, I don't think we're going to destroy this planet. I think we'll just kill ourselves.
I was just typing in the chat room, we all got to die from something, because Craig is saying we all die one day. And my dad always used to say, we all got to die from something. Might as well be drinking or whatever your vice is. But I mean, I've looked at all this information, and dinosaur bones, how they generally paint them in lead paint. It's because they're radioactive and they're protecting us from that radiation coming from the bones. What would explain the radiation in the bones? Do you think there was perhaps a nuclear blast, and that's why we see these sand or basically ash figures in certain places, or outlines of people burnt into the wall and such? Do you think we had that technology at one time? And I'm kind of getting off of scope of Dogman and Bigfoot and such, but I mean, it's just a question in my mind, and something I've been discussing with people recently. Like, do you think we had that knowledge at one point or at several points during our time on this earth?
Well, considering the level of technology the Egyptians had, like you said, they had working batteries. They invented their own light bulbs. I mean, considering the level of technology they possessed, it's not outside the realm of possibility. But by the same token, we don't know what lies outside our solar system. The asteroid that they believe killed off the dinosaurs could have had a uranium core. I mean, it could have been an extremely heavy metal that basically flooded the air with radioactivity. Again, we just don't know. There's so many things in the universe that man doesn't know. And anybody that thinks we've solved all the secrets of the universe is deluding themselves. I mean, we know less than 5% of our own oceans. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the depths of our own oceans. So we can't really consider ourselves having discovered everything there is to discover on this planet when 95% of the oceans have yet to be explored.
Yeah, and that's what I was touching on earlier. Like, back in mythological days, which people are finding more and more, that mythology is actually a form of reality. It was just in the past, and things that happened in the past that we can't really wrap our minds around. And there's all these sea monsters and such, and you actually see things washing up on shore. Yes, a lot of them were hoaxes, but there are actual things washing up on shore that we can't explain. And even on land, like I'm saying, the antelope with the gills or whatnot. There's so many different things that are going on in our world that we can't really explain. And Tripp was saying, well, get the F off the ride. The younger generations and I ain't giving up. Get the F out of our way. Just because you quit doesn't give you the right to F up Mother Earth even more. But I don't really think it's the younger generations. I think it's, the older guys wanting to live in the comfort that they can, and they really don't care about younger generations because they don't have kids, or they don't have that thought process. They're just wrapped around their own happiness, and they don't really care about what's going to happen to our kids in the future. And I think a lot of the things that we're doing is just putting it beyond the scope of, again, we can't wrap our mind around it, and our kids have to live with what's going to happen, and it's going to be really ugly and terrible.
Yeah, I think we've just got far too many people that only care about what happens to them and don't look at a bigger picture. There's just not enough people that are willing to put other people before themselves. And it's kind of an alien concept to a lot of people anymore. Terms like self-sacrifice, commitment, they're kind of going by the wayside. And it's sad because you see a decline in while we have advances in technology, we have declines in morality. We have people killing each other over tennis shoes. I mean, that's sad that it's come to that when we live in a technological age with some of the greatest technological breakthroughs ever. I mean, the simple fact that you and I are discussing, you're in Colorado and I'm in Missouri, and we're having this conversation over a computer was unheard of when I was a kid. I mean, that was Buck Rogers level, fantasy. That could never happen. And now it's so commonplace. I mean, people carry cell phones that are essentially like on Star Trek. When I was a kid back in the 70s, they were talking on communicators like, oh, that's awesome, that'll never happen. We all carry cell phones. I mean, the cell phone I've got right here next to me has more computing power than the computer they used to land on the moon. The technology is just really astounding at what it can do. But for everything we've gained, we've lost core pieces of ourselves. And I think that's wherein we find so much appeal in legends and creatures like Bigfoot and Dogman and aliens. It's because it forces us to re-examine everything we thought to be true. It forces us to come to terms with maybe we aren't the biggest dog on the planet. Maybe there's something out there bigger. And hopefully people can come together and realize that there is something bigger than us. And there's something more important. And it's just as important to what we leave behind as what we've had left behind for us. Mm-hmm. We've got to leave a legacy for our kids. We've got to leave a legacy for our grandkids. And by losing more and more of our humanity, only thing we're doing is creating generations of people that care about nothing but themselves, and that's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is. And it scares me, so I try not to think about it, but at the same time, I try to do things to ward against it. Different people can recycle and do other things, and they think, what is this really doing? I'm only one person, but every person counts, and that bio footprint, or whatever you call it, that you leave behind really does matter. So do what you can today to preserve the world tomorrow for our kids. Like I'm saying, but it's really scary as far as the government goes, all the things that they keep from us. People that are active military are considered civilians. Everybody else is considered citizens. And citizens, civilians, I got that backwards. Military is citizens, and regular people are civilians. And citizens are to know when the end of the world and all this other stuff is happening. They're supposed to be able to go to bunkers and whatnot. So it's really freaky what they do. And then there's this bioengineering, and they can create sheep and other animals. There's been sightings in the Four Corners area of little T-Rex looking critters, and they're only about a foot or so tall, but maybe those are just babies. I haven't seen one for myself, but I've seen pictures. But then there's Photoshop, so what do you really believe? But it's really scary what they can do. And a scientist recently was able to get DNA from the bones of a dinosaur because she tried and tried and tried so hard, and then she's finally like, here's a cell from the DNA of this creature. I have a cell. And so they can actually take that cell, and if they want to, genetically enhance and grow it. So what are we supposed to expect when we're dealing with that sort of stuff? Why are they even messing with that? Or the whole CERN effect of trying to recreate the God effect, or whatever you want to call it. The God
particle, the Higgs boson particle.
Yeah, it just blows my mind.
Is that Jeff Goldblum said in the first Jurassic Park movie, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should?
Right. Just leave that alone. There's a reason that they were wiped out so we could survive, but you want to bring them back so they can wipe us out again? Because they would, if we did. They're that more advanced as far as being predators, and we cannot really compare with it. We have firepower and such, but, I mean, if that were to happen, that would be insane. Jurassic Park, I don't want to be there. But it's interesting what they can do and what technology is doing, and just the different ways that people want to mess with it. Like, I would never try to recreate the Big Bang with the God particle and such. And, you hear about these different time shifts or the Mandela effect or whatever you want to call it. Different things changing. I know Fruit Loops was spelled this way. I know Bernstein Bears was spelled this way. The guy was holding a turkey drumstick instead of a piece of paper. Like, there's all kinds of different things that have changed the Mona Lisa smile. And could it be due to the whole God particle and causing these small collisions that aren't as huge as the creation of us, but they're little inside of our realm? Maybe they're causing little shifts. Do you have any thoughts on that, or is that just like fairy tale hoopla or woohoo, as some people would like to call it?
I think it applies to the multiverse theory. I think when you start playing with the God particle, you're basically dropping a pebble in the pond, and those ripples will affect other things. And sometimes those ripples can cause big changes. If you're throwing you're dropping the God particle in the pond, so to speak, you might be seeing ripples that are bouncing back from other realities, from other dimensions. That the multiverse theory is to be believed, that there's an infinite number of realities out there. We could easily be seeing basically echoes from another dimension.
It's funny how they say that, in these different dimensions, there's only slight little changes. And there could be another you that has blue eyes or blonde hair or is a little bit taller or a little bit shorter. There's tiny little differences in between this realm and the next. And when I'm telling my husband about these things, and he's saying, no, it wasn't Luke, I am your father. It was something else. And I'm like, okay, other dimensional Vern, whatever you say. I'm not going to disagree with you because I don't want my head to explode. But it's funny how we do find those, and, they're saying it's just a memory lapse or people are remembering it wrong, but why is the number so large?
The Mandela effect is pretty much mind-boggling. When I first heard about that, I thought, oh, surely that's a load of crap. But the more I read about it, the more I thought, well, you know what? I remember some of these things being that way. And it's kind of mind blowing, so to speak. It's very staggering and sobering to think about that. What could have caused it? What caused that shift? What caused things to change? Was it somebody from the future time traveling? Was it the Higgs boson particle when they tried the super collider in CERN? What caused these weird ripples in reality? And it's bizarre. I mean, the conspiracy theory angle aside, there's too much there to be ignored. You really can't say, oh, it's just your imagination, because this isn't one or two people noticing something. This is millions of people saying, that's not right.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I've seen it myself. Like when my kids brought this to me, and they're like, Mom, you got to see this. Because I would read them the Bernstein Bears and stuff like that, and then they're like, well, it says it was spelled like this, but I know it was spelled like that, and I was like, I totally agree. We were so into this book thing that, and even Curious George used to have a tail. Remember him hanging from a tree? Now he doesn't have a tail, which makes sense because he's a chimpanzee, but he did have a tail at one point in time. But yeah, there's so many of these things, even Mandela, where it first started, and like I was going to say, for the longest time, everything remained the same. But now, I do believe it is the CERN project and things that are happening there, because it's only within that time that these little shifts have been happening, and that's the really only way that I can explain what is happening, why these changes are happening. And the more and more you look at it, the more and more things are changing, and they keep doing it over and over again, so we can just keep expecting it. I kind of wonder someday if I'm going to wake up and my kids are going to be gone or whatever. Like, did this test not have kids?
Or you wake up and one of your kids has red hair.
Yeah, right? Like, when'd you dye your hair?
Like, what are you talking about? My hair's always been red. No, it hasn't.
And then there's the footprints in the limestone of the dinosaur tracks and the human tracks.
Yeah.
They're in limestone. It wasn't just mud, it's limestone. And BTO in the chat room was saying, does D.A. ever perhaps consider that humans may have lived amongst dinosaurs, since there have been archaeological excavation sites that have taken aerial pics of, like, 40-foot human skeletal bones?
That's one thing I haven't read a whole lot about, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think humans have existed longer than recorded history would let us believe, because there's so many things that we know for a fact now that are proven. Like we know the fact that the Vikings were on the North American continent 800 years before Columbus. Yet we still have a Columbus Day. We don't have a Leif Erikson Day. And there's a little town in southeastern Oklahoma called Heavener, Oklahoma. Heavener, Heavener. Now you can Google it and look it up. They found a Viking rune stone carved into the side of a bluff in Heavener, Oklahoma, that was dated to the late 800s. Which means the Vikings made it as far as Oklahoma, 500-600 years before Columbus was ever here. So anytime we find something like that, anytime we discover something that challenges the scientifically held beliefs that they've held for so long, they either one try to discredit it or two ignore it, and desperately cling to what they want to be the truth. But just because they claim it's the truth doesn't mean it's necessarily the truth. Now, there's more out there than we realize what's going on, and it wouldn't surprise me to find out that there's been, humanoid life for thousands and thousands, and possibly millions of years before the scientists would want us to believe, because it would challenge everything that they claim to be true. And I think, as an objective scientist, it should be your job to challenge the knowledge, not to protect it. I think as new knowledge comes to light, it should be shared. I think that knowledge should be embraced, especially if it's knowledge that we can verify. Like we can verify from the records, not only of Eric the Red and Leif Erikson, but we can actually find remnants of their settlements. We know the Vikings were here that long before. So if that's something that they're not willing to budge on, what else are they not willing to budge on? I mean,
yeah, there's so much proof. Like there's, sites that they have excavated, and they're like, this was a Viking site. And this was here. Nobody ever thought it was, but it is. And like you said, the rune stones, some of them were fake. The guy that found the original was like, hey, I can make a killing off this. So he started making others. I think a small percentage of them were real to life. The other ones were modified for, his well-being. But, you see these native mutations as far as large natives, blue eyes, different things like that. Like you're saying, the Vikings came in a lot further than everybody thinks and a lot sooner than everybody thinks. And I know it was a hell of a lot sooner than Christopher Columbus. Like, he just thought he discovered America, but really it was the Indies. And, the Vikings were here first. And then there's Plymouth Rock with, the settlers and such. But yeah, I do believe that the Vikings were here, and there's so much more that we do have to discover, and we're just too busy looking at other stuff to really find it. But there are a small percentage of us that are into that and are looking for the answers and want to know more, which I'm so excited about. I love these movies or shows on History Channel and A&E and such. It entertains me.
Absolutely, me too. I love the shows like that. I think anything that challenges our established precepts is something that's going to give us something to think about. And that's, to me, one of the most appealing things about the Bigfoot and Dogman legends is I believe they're out there. And I believe it's just a matter of time till something happens that they can't cover up, that they can't ignore. And for whatever reason, I think, honestly, that the government doesn't want the knowledge to get out. I think possibly part of it might be if there's that closely related hominid coexisting with us on this planet, it'll challenge a lot of religious precepts. It'll challenge a lot of what we know about the fundamental evolution of human beings. It'll also make us not necessarily the top of the food chain, and it would make us reevaluate a lot of things we're doing to like forests and lakes and rivers, because we're polluting another intelligent species' habitat.
Yeah, and I totally
these are-
agree with you. And they're keeping everything from us as far as things that are here and UFOs and aliens. You know, they're keeping everything from us because they're afraid of how we will react. But we are at the end of our time, so can you once again share your website and such with us?
Absolutely. You can find all my books listed as they are released on jellingtonashton.com. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter at D.A. Roberts Author. Hunt me down on Facebook. I'd love to hear any questions you guys might have. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
It was so great to have you again, and I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone in Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else you may be listening in the universe tonight. It was so great having you guys on. I had a wonderful time this evening, and it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow for Scary Sunday, as Halloween is coming up and the veil is thinning. Some people don't believe in it, but I do. And you can find us on spacedoutradio.com. You guys, don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we own the Nate. Until next time, nighty night, love and light. To all my space cases out there, you guys have a wonderful Sunday. And I will see you back here tomorrow night. You guys can join us for the after party at 1-970-335-9596. Hope to see you there, and take care of yourself until I see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.